What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. One show prologue: red-haired pirates in a small humble village, with fields, forests and windmills surrounding it. A group of pirates unwind and drink in a bar. This bar is owned and run by a young woman by the name of Makino, who is currently giggling to herself watching the antics between the pirate captain and a young rowdy boy.
Come on Shanks, let me go out to sea with you guys next time. The boy pestered the captain, Shanks, who just laughed and raised his eyebrow in amusement. Shanks is a tall, well-built man with dark red hair, and a scar on his left eye. At this point in time he wears a simple straw hat with a red ribbon around the base, a simple white button-up shirt and slacks.
You? Shanks said incredulously, pointing to the boy with the hand holding his beer. You can't even swim, kid, much less fight back anyone who'd pick a fight with pirates. So what if I can't swim? I just need to not follow the ship. The young boy stood up on the bar stool he'd been sitting on before continuing, and I can fight. My punches are like pistols. Punching the space in front of the captain in demonstration. Like pistols, Yeah sure, I believe that, Shanks said non-committedly as he turned back to face Makino. This the young boy did not find amusing and opened his mouth to retort, if not for a rather rotund pirate with goggles, a bandana, and a stick of meat. The sea isn't a place for little kids to play in, Luffy, much less slow ones like you. The rest of the pirates roared in laughter at their comrade's jab. Shut up, I'm an adult and I can fight, the boy yelled, his face somehow now having shark teeth. Not denying you're slow, Luffy? Another pirate with dirty blonde hair asked, his eyebrow quirked in amusement. Luffy didn't seem to respond for a second, seemingly confused before he'd understood what slow meant in the context of this conversation. Hey, I am not stupid. The bar was filled with more laughter as Luffy was in fact slow on the uptake. Even the barmaid had laughed at her little brother's expense while handing a glass of juice to Shanks. Okay, calm down, Luffy. Shanks pushed the glass towards the young boy with an impassive face save for his eyes which twinkled with mischief. Here, drink some juice. His crew calming down to watch what would happen next in expectation as they recognized the look in their captain's eye, except for one man who shook his head in exasperation at his captain's antics. The boy's mood turned a full 180 upon being offered the glass. Thanks, Shanks, he said before drinking the glass. Huh? What kind of pirate drinks juice? Shanks grinned as Luffy fell for his trap. His crew minus the exasperated man roared in laughter once again. That was a dirty trick, and the shark teeth come out once more as Luffy voices his displeasure at falling for the prank. Shanks just laughs louder and sticks his tongue out and pulling his eye at Luffy childishly. Luffy grumbles before getting up to leave. On his way to the door, the exasperated man sighs before calling out to Luffy. He may seem childish, but the captain's just looking out for you. A pirate ship is the last place a child should be on. Luffy stopped and looked at the man, Shanks' first mate, Ben Beckman, a tall man with long black hair pulled back in a ponytail, a cigar in his mouth and his rifle forever at his side. For once there was a contemplating look on Luffy's face before turning back to bar where Shanks once again pulled his eye and taunted him. Pretty sure he just wants to make fun of me, Ben. Luffy deadpanned as Ben face-palmed at his captain's antics. Luffy, would you like some food? Makino asked, bringing out some food, mostly meat. All his anger and displeasure forgotten, Luffy returned to the bar quick as lightning, grinning ear to ear. Thanks Makino, you're the best, he said before digging in. Makino giggled, amused at how quickly her little brother's mood changes when food's involved. Shanks raised his eyebrow as amusement as well before turning his focus back to his beer and his plate. A little while later the doors to the bar were kicked open as a tall man with black hair framing his face and an X-shaped scar above his left eye and walked in with a smug expression on his face. The mood in the bar suddenly became quiet as the pirates observed this newcomer and his group bandits. Luffy peeked at the obvious bandits before turning to look at a chest with a weird fruit with swirls. Dessert was the only thought that went through his head before he started eating it with a scrunched up face. Bletch. How can I help you, sir? Makino asked politely, a bead of sweat the only indication of her nervousness. The man regarded her with a bored look before replying. Why else do mountain bandits come down to villages like this? Alcohol. Unfortunately, we are out of alcohol, sir. The man turned from her to look at the pirates around the bar. And what are they drinking? Water. He sneered with disgust in his eyes. Oh no, they're drinking alcohol, but it's the last of our stock. I apologize, sir, Makino said, bowing her head slightly as more sweat beads appeared, fearing this man would start a fight. The man opened his mouth to say something before a bottle of beer was gestured towards him from Shanks. It ain't much, but you could have this bottle. I haven't opened it yet. Shanks smiled at the bandit. No need to grill the barmaid. Ain't her fault we pirates came and drank all her alcohol away. The bandit took the bottle from Shanks, seemingly calmed before he grinned maliciously at Shanks, smashing the bottle on the pirate captain's head.
Makino gasped, fearing the pirate captain may retaliate, while Luffy turned his attention to the fight, still reeling from the unpleasant taste of the weird fruit. You think that small bottle of beer would have been enough to satisfy me? The bandit sneered. I am Higuma the bear, leader of the Higuma bandits and worth 8 million berries, you pathetic pirate.
Contrary to Makino's expectations, however, Shanks just sighed. Aw man, now the floor's wet. He looked up to Makino, getting of his seat. Sorry about the mess, Makino. Shanks then bent down and started picking the pieces up. Aw no, it's fine, Captain. Let me clean that up, Makino said, flustered as she went to grab a mop as well as a broom and dustpan. Higuma drew his blade and smashed the meal Shanks had been eating. Since you like cleaning I am sure you'll love this, he mused before turning to walk away. Idiotic useless pirates. Higuma grumbled before he was hit on the head with glass. Apologize to Shanks, you jerk, Makino gasped as she stared at Luffy in horror while Shanks and his crew turned to the boy with looks ranging from impressed and amused to disappointed and exasperated. Shanks watched Luffy from the corner of his eye contemplating whether he should be amused or reprimanding for his behavior. Higuma turned to the boy with a glare. You want to die, brat? You dare throw a glass at me? He roared, clutching his sword, his group of bandits grabbing their swords as well, sneering at the boy. Let's rip him apart, Captain. Tear him up and get rid of these lousy pirates as well. The barmaid's pretty cute, why don't we show her why bandits are better than pirates? Shanks' eyes were shadowed by his hat as he heard Higuma and his bandits' jeers. Some things I can laugh off, but this? Gone was the cheerful and easygoing captain, his eyes hardened in a glare as he turned to his first mate, signaling to prepare for confrontation. Ben didn't disappoint as he tightened his grip on his rifle, but before any of the pirates could move, Luffy jumped towards Higuma, pulling his fist back, shocking them all. Now Luffy jumping wasn't a shock. The shock was that he destroyed the barstool he'd stood on when he jumped, and Shanks, Ben, Lucky Roo, and Yasopp were the only ones who could still see him as sailed through the air to punch Higuma, contorting the bandit leader's face when his fist made contact before sending him flying through the door.
To everyone else, Higuma was gone, and from where he stood Luffy looked shocked and confused. The sound of wood breaking and something smashing through ground brought the attention of all the occupants of the bar to the entrance, where they could see the bandit leader with a fist imprint on his face, or what was recognizable of it in his body, sporting wounds, bruises and even a dislocation of his left shoulder. Boss! The bandits cried before running towards their leader, leaving Luffy to blink at his fist in confusion. The pirates who weren't Shanks or his top members were equally confused and looked between the young boy and the bandit leader he'd wrecked. Luffy, how did you? Shanks stopped his sentence there before turning to the chest and, upon finding it empty, was filled with dread. Luffy turned when his name was called but didn't have any chance to ask Shanks what was wrong before the man grabbed Luffy by the shoulders. Luffy, did you eat the fruit? Shanks yelled while shaking the boy. Swirls appeared on Luffy's face as he was throttled. Huh. Yeah, it wasn't good, but it was there and I was hungry. Luffy said as he watched Shanks' eyes fill with horror. Wait, how am I able to see that?
Luffy, that was a devil fruit. Once you eat one you lose the ability to swim ever again. Shanks yelled, expecting Luffy to follow up with realization and horror of his own, but contrary to that, Luffy stumped him. Shanks, why are you scared? Why was I able to see it in your eyes? It isn't really hard to see, he's shaken up, Luffy. Ben said, equally confused by the young boy's out-of-character question. No, not that. I saw something forming in his eyes. I felt something before. Suddenly Luffy's hand shot up and covered his nose. Why does everything stink so much? He cried. Some of the pirates chuckled to themselves at Luffy's blunt comment before they shut up and stared in shock as Luffy's form began to change. Luffy cried in pain as his body seemed to break from the inside. Shanks, what happening to me? Help me. Shanks let go of Luffy's shoulders as the boy's form suddenly burst with fur and became smaller and smaller, his ear becoming triangular in shape and his mouth elongating into a snout. When the transformation ended, in Luffy's place was a wolf pup with jet black fur and a white mark on his chest, wearing the boy's clothes, golden eyes blinking in confusion as it turned to look at the occupants in the bar who were frozen staring at the canine. The pup stopped to look up to Shanks, whose eyes were wide with disbelief and fear, yet a flicker of amusement was starting to take shape behind them. When the pup whimpered, its eyes bugged out in shock before looking at itself and promptly started jumping around, confused and scared. The flicker of amusement became a raging wildfire as Shanks busted out laughing, pointing at the pup. You look like a stuffed animal from a carnival, Luffy. Lucky Roo had joined in his captain's good mood as well as the more relaxed and easygoing members of his crew. Ben, Yasopp, and the others seemed to still be in shock while Makino made a dash to the wolf pup, who began to whimper and cry. Luffy? Is it really you? Makino asked as she brought the wolf pup to her chest, running her fingers through his head in an attempt to calm him down. It's okay, Luffy. It's okay, we'll figure this out. She whispered, clutching the puppy closer to her as he calmed down a bit more. Captain, what happened to Luffy? Can you turn him back? She asked Shanks, who'd calmed down and took a seat in front of the barmaid. Well, like I said earlier, he ate a devil fruit and it looks like it was the Inu no Mi. Model. Wolf? Shanks said, scratching the back of his head, looking at the wolf pup, who stared back, still sniffling from time to time. To be honest, Makino, we had no idea what the fruit was when we'd gotten it. We'd known it was a devil fruit, but we couldn't find it on any encyclopedia or journal about them. Makino frowned at the lack of information, but supposed she'd have to take what she could get, considering she herself didn't know squat about devil fruits to begin with. It's a Zoan fruit, meaning it grants its user the ability to transform into the creature the fruit's modeled after. Ben added, much to Makino's relief. There's also two rare subclasses of Zoan fruits, ancient and mythical. Ancient Zoans are modeled after animals that have long gone extinct, such as dinosaurs, while mythical Zoans are modeled after beasts from myth and legend like dragons, he said as he watched the bandits outside the bar get up in rage before turning back to the bar. Shanks had also noticed this and nodded to his first mate to deal with them. Shanks turned back to Luffy, who'd escaped from Makino's arms and now sat in front of him, making growls, yelps, barks, and whatever else he could sound out, trying to communicate with the man. Calm down, Luffy. Think about what you once looked like and you should be able to return to normal. The wolf pup stopped and seemed to close its eyes in concentration. Well, either this is a completely coincidental string of surprises or Luffy is a lot more talented than I gave him credit for, Shanks thought it as the wolf pup grew in size once again slowly returning to the young boy he'd grown to love like a little brother. Then again, he's young enough where he could pass as my son instead. Shanks mused as Ben returned inside the bar, leaving the bandits sore and out of commission outside. Thanks, Shanks. Luffy said, albeit distractedly, as he stared at his hands deep in thought. Shanks, how much longer are you going to stick around in the village? He asked somberly, for once taking Pirate Captain off guard before Shanks sighed. Probably 2 or 3 more voyages around before heading back to the Grand Line. I'm sorry, Luffy, but even with this fruit it isn't safe for you. Hell, I'd wager it just made your already dismal chances non-existent. Shanks thought, standing up and ruffling the boy's hair before walking out the bar, his crew following in suit. Luffy watched them go with sad look in his eye before he too walked out and into the forest to think. A few days pass and Luffy sits on the bar stool once again drinking juice from a glass with a pouty annoyed face, watching Makino giggle at him. It's not funny, Makino. He whined, but the barmaid just laughed before scratching his left ear that had turned into its wolf form. Sorry, Luffy, but it is funny and honestly adorable, Makino said, watching the pouty face melt into content before laughing as a tail popped out and started wagging uncontrollably. The wagging stopped as the tail stood on end and Luffy turned to face outside, his ears alert. What's wrong, Luffy? Makino asked before gasping as she saw Higuma coming in, his face heavily bandaged, sword drawn in one hand and a bucket in the other, and a manic look in his eyes. There you are. The veins of Higuma's neck bulged as he walked closer to the bar, his goons remaining at the door blocking the exit. Makino tried to grab Luffy so she could take him and run, but before she could he jumped off the stool and raised his fists towards Higuma, growling as wisps of dark flames flickered around him. What do you want, dumb baboons? You threw a glass at me, punched me out the bar, imprinting your fist on my face, and worst of all, you've tarnished my reputation. A child wrecking a 8 million belly mountain bandit? I'm here to kill you, Higuma yelled, running towards the boy, throwing the bucket at Luffy. Instinctively Luffy jumped to get away from the bucket, but some of its contents splashed onto him and the effect was instantaneous. His ears reverted back to normal human ones and his tail vanished, his strength leaving him. Wah! Higuma kicked Luffy across the face, sending him crashing into the bar. Seawater supposedly makes devil fruit eaters weak, brat. Makino gasped in horror, trying to get to Luffy, but one of Higuma's men grabbed her and held her back. Luffy coughed out some blood and groaned in pain, gritting his teeth as Higuma grabbed him by the hair and dragged him out the bar into the streets. Douse him, Seawater. I want him weak and pitiful. The bandits poured their extra buckets onto the boy, completely drenching him. Makino screamed for help, pleading for them to leave Luffy alone, but the bandit who'd been holding her just threw her against one of the tables before following his leader out. Gathering her bearings, Makino ran out the bar and into the streets, coming across the mayor who'd come to see what the commotion was about. Makino? What's wrong? Are you hurt? It's Luffy, Mayor Wood slap. That bandit Higuma grabbed him and wants to kill him. Makino cried as the mayor's face paled considerably. Everyone, find them. Look for those bandits. WHO took Luffy. The mayor yelled as he himself along with Makino began running, searching for where the bandits had gone. They're here, Mayor Wood slap. A villager said, pointing towards the edge of the village. Soon the whole village arrived at the edge, where Luffy was battered and bruised, lying pitifully on the ground, gritting his teeth as Higuma pressed his face deeper into the dirt. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Cross me and I will beat you and execute you, just like this runt. Higuma sneered, raising his sword to sever the young boy's head. No, sir, please stop, Mayor Woodslap begged. Whatever that boy has done, he's still just a boy. Please don't hurt him any longer. Spare him. Bowing his head on the ground, Mayor Woodslap continued to plead with them to leave Luffy alone. Higuma regarded the mayor with a cold look before grinning like a madman, his eyes gleaming with malice. No, I don't think I will. The village screamed in horror and Makino stared, unable to turn away as the blade began its descent onto Luffy's neck. Clang! Higuma's eyes widened in disbelief and shock as his blade was intercepted by Red Hair's sword before it could touch Luffy's nape. I thought your punches were as strong as pistols, Luffy. A good-natured voice mused as Mayor Woodslap breathed a sigh of relief at the appearance of the pirate captain. Makino's eyes watered as Shanks appeared and saved Luffy before they turned into confusion. Wait, where had he? Shut up, Shanks. Luffy grumbled into the dirt before Higuma pushed him back down into the ground with his foot. WHO, do you think you were inter? Shanks grabbed Higuma by the throat and lifted him off the ground, freeing Luffy in the process. Listen well, bandit. Shanks spat, his eyes shadowed by his straw hat. Whether I'm splattered with alcohol, food, or even spit on, most of the time I just laugh and forget about it. Shanks looked up at the man he held up. But, no matter the reason. Higuma wheezed as the pirate captain's grip tightened. If you hurt a friend of mine, bringing the bandit scum down to eye level, you'll pay. Luffy's eyes watered as Shanks' words struck a chord in him. Shanks. Oi, let go of our boss, one of the bandits yelled. Don't get involved, pirates, that's playing dirty, another bellowed. What, you thought you were fighting saints? Ben Beckman said, smirking. We're pirates. Leading the charge, Ben and the rest of the pirate crew brought the bandits down. Higuma struggled to get out of Shanks' grip as he watched his men being taken down, only to be thrown down the road, his sword clattering out of his hand as he rolled to a stop. Pick up your blade, bandit, Shanks stated, coldly, pulsing with energy. What is that? Luffy thought as he watched waves of raw power emanated off of Shanks. Growling, Higuma stood up and grabbed his blade before he charged at Shanks. Raising his blade to finish off the scum raising towards him, Shanks was caught off guard as the bandit grinned and threw a pellet on the ground that erupted into a smokescreen. A smoke bomb? Coward, Shanks recovered quickly and seemed to focus even harder, sensing Higuma coming to his side, reaching for something. No, not something. Luffy. Shanks reached to pull the boy out of the way with his right arm before Higuma could reach him, only for the bandit to change targets and aim to slice Shanks' arm off instead. Stay away, dumb baboon. Luffy yelled as he heard the blade moving towards Shanks' arm. That was when, once again, Shanks was dumbfounded. A faint silhouette appeared behind Luffy. A massive jet black wolf the size of a sloop, snarling as a wave of energy slammed outwards, knocking the bandit leader out. Conqueror's Haki, Shanks thought as he caught Luffy, who collapsed after exerting his will. The silhouette of the massive wolf had vanished as quickly as it came as well. Ben approached Shanks as the pirate captain held Luffy with eyes that now shined as if he just found a storehouse's worth of well-aged sake. Captain, that was Conqueror's Haki, wasn't it? Shanks nodded in confirmation, taking his eyes off Luffy to face his first mate. This kid just keeps getting more and more interesting, doesn't he, Ben? The tall raven-haired pirate just smirked in response before a more somber look on his face took hold. To think after all these years we'd be the ones who would find that devil fruit. Contrasting his first mate's take on the appearance of what had to be one of the most ridiculously powerful fruits out there, Shanks' grin just widened. He's definitely going to be making waves when he sets out to sea. Raising an eyebrow, Ben turned his focus from Luffy back to his captain. You're not taking him with us. Ben was well aware he seemed contradicting with that statement, but at the same time he could not help but think Luffy would end up being an undeniably powerful pirate when he got older, and much that would benefit the crew. Not even mentioning the fact that, genetics aside, he could pass as your son. No, Shanks said firmly, but still with a smile on his face as he stood up carrying Luffy as he walked back towards the villagers. He needs to make it on his own, with his own adventures and experiences, trials and tribulations. Ben didn't say anything in response, waiting for his captain to finish, knowing he had something else to add. Besides, I don't need an anchor like this brat on my ship. Ben shook his head in exasperation and amusement. So he does acknowledge it after all, seeing what his captain truly meant through his choice of words. Another day goes by before Luffy stands on the docks watching Ben and the others packing up and heading back to their boat. Shanks walked from where he'd been talking to the mayor and Makino towards the docks to stand next to Luffy, ruffling the young boy's head between his wolf ears that had popped out again, his tail downcast reflecting his gloomy mood. Not gonna ask if you can join us on our voyage? Luffy just shook his head. I know you're not going to bring me, and, noticing the young boy trailing of Shanks, looked down before prodding him to continue, and I want to make my own crew. I want to go on adventures with them and show you what I achieve when I meet you again. Luffy said, his tail now wagging as he worked an ear-splitting grin. Shanks' eyes widened briefly before he decided to take a jab at Luffy. Huh. You don't have what it takes to be a pirate, Shanks said, sticking his tongue out at the boy whose tail now stood straight as he glared at the older man. Yeah, I do. I'll get a crew better than yours and find the world's greatest treasure. I'll roam the seas as the freest man in the world, the Pirate King. The red-haired pirates had stopped to watch and listen their captain and his, in all but name, son's conversation, smiling widely to themselves at Luffy's final exclamation. Their smiles didn't hold a candle on Shanks, however, who took off his hat, the straw hat with a red ribbon at the base. In that case, Luffy's eyes widened in shock as the straw hat was placed on his head. I'll leave this hat to you. As you know, it's very important to me. Shanks walked away towards his ship, leaving Luffy, who began shedding tears. Give it back to me someday, when you've become a great pirate. It wouldn't be until many years later where Luffy returned his hat to the man who'd stopped by his village and changed his life forever. A pirate, someone who he'd always been told was evil incarnate, became more than just someone he'd strived to become like. He found the one person in the world he would ever acknowledge as his father. ASL, Mayor Wood Slap was anxious as he watched the man hailed as the hero of the Marines read the letter red-haired Shanks left for him. An elderly man built like a pro wrestler, famous as the Marine who'd cornered and fought against the late Pirate King Gold D. Roger on numerous occasions, as well as being the one to put down the infamous Rox D. Zebek. Beads of sweat began rolling down the mayor's face as he watched the vice admiral finish reading the letter. Yelling, screaming, fists of love, those were reactions he'd expected from the man who'd learned his grandson, who he'd been grooming to be a Marine, had spent an extensive amount of time with an infamous emperor, but resignation? That was the last thing he'd expected to see on the old man's face. I know pirates are a malicious and ruthless bunch, but Red Hair is one of the more tame ones, more out on the seas for adventure and alcohol rather than slaughter, rape and, well, carnage. For the first time since he sat down to read the letter, Monkey D. Garp looked straight at the mayor's face. A pirate is still a pirate. It didn't matter to the old Marine what the pirate did, they'd still be a pirate. The degree of his delivery on punishment if he came across them may vary, of course, but once again a pirate is still a pirate. But that isn't what's bothering me, it's the fruit my grandson has eaten. Mayor Wood Slap was not expecting that to be what weighed on the man's mind, and clearly his confusion was evident as Garp continued. It's not a standard zone fruit variant like Red Hair and his first mate first assumed it to be. As Garp continued his explanation, the mayor's face paled further and further until he was white as a sheet. My God. Garp hummed in acknowledgement of the shorter man's shock and disbelief. I'll be taking Luffy with me to the mountains. Fuchsia village won't be able to cope with this. Ending the discussion there, the old Marine left to take his grandson away. With this, Luffy will never be able to become a Marine. Well, if I can't protect him that way, I'll just have to prepare him for when he sets sail. 6 days later, the two Monkey D's started their trek, filled with a grandfather punching his grandson with fists of love and tossing said grandson around like a baseball a couple of hundred times, the pair before finding themselves at a somewhere house on MT. Kalubo. Hey Gramps, why'd you bring to a house with bandits? Garp stopped blinking in surprise before turning to his grandson who'd been sporting wolf ears and a fluffy tail since he'd landed in Fuchsia Village almost a week ago. How'd you know that? I can smell them. They smell like alcohol, steel and cigarettes, sniff sniff and blood. Garp opened his mouth probably to question why those things equaled bandit when his brain processed that last word. Many screams were heard as the Marine busted through the wall on the front of the house yelling for someone named Dayton. Probably should have clarified I smelled animal blood. Luffy's sweat dropped. You gonna come down from there or what? Luffy asked turning to his upper right at a boy a little older than him with freckles and eyes filled with hate, although at the moment they were filled with shock. That's a real common feeling huh? Luffy mused to himself. I'm a wolf man cause, I hate the Inu Inu no mi. Model. Wolf. That's why I was able to figure out where you were as well as who was in the house. Luffy said to the older boy with a smile before turning to fully face him. My name's Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet you, Luffy exclaimed his tail wagging playfully behind him. The older boy blinked before muttering, Portgas D. Ace, before shaking his head and glaring at Luffy. He jumped down from his boulder and regarded Luffy with once over before walking towards the house where Garp now stood arms crossed waiting for himself and Luffy who followed after. Next to Garp was a tall rotund woman who one could not exactly call a beauty or kind but Luffy's instincts told him she wouldn't harm him. Luffy, I see you've met your older brother Ace. Luffy looked confused. Sure they both had black hair and similar eyes if you discounted the shape but they certainly didn't smell anything alike. Adopted older brother, Garp amended seeing Luffy's confused look. Dayton and Ace blinked at Garp's correction. Why'd he bother mentioning that? Dayton thought before realizing there was something wrong with the new kid she'd be taking under her wing. Why the hell do you have dog ears and a fluffy tail? Luffy just stared at her slack-jawed expression before picking his nose. I ate a devil fruit and became a wolf man. The deadpan response was more than enough proof that this was indeed Garp's grandson and the orange-haired woman groaned thinking of all the suffering she'd have to endure with another demon running around. I'll leave him here with you for now, Dayton. Garp said giving Ace a head pat and ruffling Luffy's hair between his ears before starting descent back to Fuchsia Village. Oh and you can stop trying to convince them to be Marines. It won't work anymore. Dayton's eyes bugged as Ace's jaw dropped. Stop trying to make them, me Marines. Garp paused his walk and turned back to Ace. You can thank Luffy for that one Ace. I'll be back to train both of you to be ready for when you set sail. Goodbye Gramps. Luffy yelled his tail wagging but pointing downwards reflecting his mood that while happy was also slightly sad, in other words, bittersweet. Ace turned to his adopted younger brother, too shocked to mad at the world. How do you convince him to give up making me a Marine? Luffy turned to Ace a contemplative look on his face before smiling. Well you are my older brother so I guess I can tell you. That night Ace still wasn't sure what to make of the young boy especially after learning what his devil fruit entailed. He looks like an idiot, and can act like it sometimes too. Ace sweat dropped as he recalled the ridiculous dance he'd somehow convinced the bandits to join him do over dinner. But he's a lot more perceptive than you'd think. Why are you sad? Luffy asked Ace who'd walked out after having dinner to watch the moon. Ace glared. I think you need your eyes checked. For God's sakes he'd been glaring the whole day at Luffy, Dayton and, well everyone and everything for that matter. Yeah you glare like you're mad a lot and you definitely are but you're more sad than mad. Luffy said somehow struck a balance between extremely competent and downright underwhelming with his statement. Why would I be sad huh? The freckled boy said, I don't know. That's why I asked you. The boy with a straw hat on his back held by a string said. A tick formed on Ace's head as he'd unwittingly backed himself into that corner. Sighing Ace just stared at the night sky, wonder what Sabo's doing. Since Luffy hadn't said anything for a few moments Ace turned to see if he'd gone, like everyone always does he thought bitterly before coming face to face with a young wolf that would have stood up a bit higher than his waist. Instead of screaming which he'd honestly have done, because who wouldn't when they turn and suddenly see a predatory animal staring at them, he scrunched up his face as the wolf licked him playfully, circling around him once, and finally plopping his head on Ace's knee. Luffy. Ace questioned the wolf who he now realized was wearing what the boy had been wearing straw hat still secured thanks to the string around his neck or chest now that he was a wolf. The wolf made a growl that sounded suspiciously like a hum before closing its eyes and cuddling closer to the freckle-faced child. Unaccustomed to contact of any kind Ace shifted around awkwardly for a bit before realizing he'd effectively been locked in by the boy-turned-wolf. You looked like you needed a friend. The wolf said a deep rumble completely different from the boy he'd conversed with earlier who had a rather high-pitched voice. Ace stiffened momentarily before biting his lip and just laying back onto the wolf. You're not as annoying when you're basically a pet. A snort was the only response Luffy gave to that comment. The next day Ace made his way out of Dayton's house to meet with Sabo like he usually did and probably should have done yesterday. Unlike usual though today he was accompanied by a jet black wolf with a white fur underbelly wearing a blue sleeveless shirt, cut-up shorts and a straw hat. Remind me why I'm not ditching you again. You tried to earlier, and even broke down a tree in attempt to stop me but I just smacked it away and caught up to you anyway. Luffy said as if describing the weather instead of an attempted homicide. Right, Ace said with half-lidded eyes, resigned to his fate of dealing with his new younger brother. They walked in silence a bit longer before they reached what could only be described as the largest filthiest junkyard in the world. Well that's what Luffy and Ace thought of it since it was the only junkyard they'd ever seen. This is a dump, Ace. Luffy deadpanned and Ace snorted. No kidding Luffy. I never noticed. Ace walked away from the scrapyard back into the forest. Sniff sniff, sniff sniff, Ace? Yeah, Luffy? I smell belly on top of that tree. Ace just nodded, somewhat expecting it. Yeah, that's where we're headed, and hopefully Sabo is already waiting there too. This is gonna be a fun explanation, Ace, though sarcastically, as he spotted Sabo peering down at him, eyes bugged at the wolf by his side. One long explanation later. A.N. Yeah, to be honest, I'll go more in depth on the ASL Brothers arc in a different chapter, or even make it a side story. This prologue is long enough as it is without the changes I plan on adding. Many days later, Ace, Luffy and Sabo are sleeping in their room at Dayton's house. Luffy slept in his wolf form, acting as a pillow and blanket for his two older brothers, who had snoring bubbles as they slept cuddled into their younger brother's side. This peaceful sleep would be the longest, most fitful rest the three brothers would get for a very long time. Crash. Luffy. Ace. Get your lazy butts out here now, Monkey D. Garp bellowed after he crashed through Dayton's front wall again. Luffy, what's the fastest you can run while carrying Sabo and me? Ace said, now sitting up wide awake. Sabo and I, Ace, it's Sabo and I, Sabo reprimanded half-heartedly as he glared at the door, wondering who was shouting so early in the morning. Correction. Luffy, what's the fastest you can run while carrying me alone? Ace asked, smirking at Sabo's glare before face-palming at the wolf who'd somehow slept through the crash and yell. A run might not be a bad idea, Ace. 10 kilometers should do well for a start. A gruff voice said from the door, staring down at the freckled child who suddenly paled white as a sheet. Sabo turned to look at the Vice Admiral he'd heard a lot about and could honestly say he wasn't liking how accurate Ace and Luffy had been so far. Who's the blonde twerp? Garp asked, picking his nose. Well, now I know where Ace and Luffy got that habit from. Sabo deadpanned in his thoughts before standing up and dusting his clothes off. Walking up to the man, he greeted politely. Good morning, sir, my name's Sabo. Garp just looked at him for a moment before asking, you want to be a pirate too? Blinking and wondering if that was a trick question considering he was a Marine Vice Admiral, Sabo decided to throw caution to the wind and nodded affirmation. The old man hummed briefly before smacking the blonde boy down onto the floor with a fist of love. Another idiot. Ace sweat dropped as he watched this before turning and started shifting his younger brother, trying to wake him up before the geezer. Pow, too late. Ace stared at his youngest brother with half-lidded eyes before flicking to his Gramps, who stared back at him. Garp turned his attention to his fist before going back to Ace, who was now wide-eyed as he realized what the geezer was planning. Fast enough to escape a fist of love, Ace is not. With all three brothers now sporting similar bumps on their heads, Garp nodded to himself in satisfaction before grabbing all three of them to start their training. The three brothers wake up to find themselves in a clearing in the forest, their abductor sitting on a tree stump with two long bamboo sticks leaning against his shoulder. Garp stood up and tossed one of the bamboo sticks to Sabo, who reached out to grab it before it sailed past him. Starting today and until the end of the week, I'll be giving you foundational work. After that, it's up to you three to progress further. Garp said as he grabbed Luffy by the back of his shirt, the boy having turned back into his complete human form, knowing what his grandfather was probably going to start with. Luffy, take a cross-sitting position. Not in the mood for another fist of love, Luffy obeyed the command and took a sit after his grandfather put him back down in front of his older brothers. Ace and Sabo, you'll be taking turns doing to each other what I'll be doing to Luffy, so pay attention, yeah? The old Marine said, tapping the bamboo stick onto his shoulder like it was a sword. Yeah. Understood, alright. So Luffy, close your eyes and try to avoid being hit, was all the warning Luffy got before he got smacked on the head with the bamboo stick. Wham! Oi! Ace and Sabo cried as they stood up, tensing their muscles, preparing to charge the old man when Luffy just grumbled. You didn't even let me close my eyes first, Grandpa, before returning to his cross-seating position like he hadn't just got whacked or was sporting a bruise. Gramps basically wants us to learn how to sense something coming towards us by forcing us to rely on every other senses aside from sight. Luffy said, now closing his eyes with a serene expression on his face as if he were meditating. Luffy. Ace thought, incredulously staring, left eye twitching at his hyperactive, loudmouthed younger brother who was somehow sitting still with a face like a monk. It's like he's become a completely different person, Sabo thought, watching as Garp raised the bamboo stick again to strike Luffy. Still tense, the two older brothers watched the bamboo stick sail through the air like a blur, but instead of the sound of bamboo meeting skin, the two brothers watched Luffy tilt backwards to avoid it, his eyes still closed and his face still impassive. From there, for the next minute or so, Garp continued his assault with downward slashes, forward thrusts, sideways sweeps, but Luffy dodged them all, still closing his eyes and monk-like face still present on the normally rambunctious child's face. Pausing for a moment, Garp raised his face to stare at the gaping boys. You waiting for a first of love? Getting the message, Ace and Sabo decided to play rock paper scissors for who'd get the chance to whack who first. Shoot. 30 minutes later, Ace's eyes gleamed as he took the bamboo stick from the blonde boy. Now it's my turn, the freckled boy said, sporting several bruises and bumps. Gulping, Sabo wondered if he got a bit too into it. Luffy himself was sporting a few more bruises, but it wasn't as many as Ace's, so the wolf boy chalked that up as progress considering the one who'd been trying to smack him was Grandpa. While Ace take his turn at whacking Sabo, why don't you go grab lunch, Luffy? While phrased like a question, Luffy knew it really wasn't. Use your hockey to find something to eat. After lunch and a 1-hour nap, we'll begin sparring for armament training. Garp walked towards the tree stump to take a seat while waiting. Okay, Grandpa. Luffy ran off to find something to eat, popping his wolf ears out so he'd be able to hear more. His tail, well, that just popped out with his ears not really contributing anything. Eventually, after running through the forest for a while, Luffy found a massive boar that he observed from a small ledge above. Kaio Obita. Luffy's body morphed and he cried silently to himself, damn it. I haven't morphed in so long it actually hurts. Bones breaking and mending. Luffy grew bigger and bigger until he was 182 centimeters tall. Robust muscles all around gleaming in the small rays of sunshine peeking through the trees due to the sheen of sweat from the transformation. Luffy's irises gleamed like gold as he peered down at the boar that had become alert and skittish, sensing a predator nearby. Tengoku no. Luffy crossed his arms over his chest, his eyes closed in focus as wisps of black flames coated his arms. Bachiraku. Luffy's eyes opened, his sclera pitched back, his irises glowing like moonlight, his pupil narrowed into a fine point, and his fists coated in black tendrils. The boar only glanced up to see a blur before a fist penetrated its skull, decimating its brain, and it knew no more. Luffy pulled his arm out of the creature's skull as it toppled onto its side. Licking his fingers coated in brain matter, Luffy dragged the creature by the snout back towards the clearing. His brothers, too beat, bruised and exhausted to comment on Luffy's new form, just stared before shrugging, accepting this was just another thing their monster of a little brother was capable of. Days went by following this trend. Wake up early in the morning to practice and enhance observation haki, Luffy leaving to hunt something down for lunch, cooking and eating whatever creature Luffy drags back, sleeping for an hour to regain energy and let the meal digest, and spending the rest of the afternoon training armament haki. The only shift in the schedule was the addition of lessons from Sabo in the evening after Garp learned that one of his grandchildren, yes, he considered Sabo his grandchild at this point, actually had a brain. On the 7th day, Garp bid his 3 grandchildren goodbye and left to return to his duties as a marine. With Garp gone, it was decided that both Ace and Sabo would attempt to whack Luffy in the first half of observation haki training, and Luffy would dual-wield the bamboo sticks afterwards for Ace and Sabo in the second half. The 3 of them all decided they'd venture out for food together from now on, and after their nap it would be Ace and Sabo against Luffy in his Kaiō form. Soon the 3 brothers would face off against crazed pirates, corrupted nobles, and family drama, and 3 brothers wishing to become pirates became 2. Their blonde brother finding a different calling in life, and while disappointed they wouldn't be able to set sail with each other as pirates, they were happy and proud that he'd found his own dream. About 7 years later, Ace set sail to form his own pirate crew, Sabo tagging along before he can regain contact with a certain beneficiary. Take care, Ace. Sabo. Luffy waved his tail, wagging in similar delight as he watched his 2 brothers getting ready to set sail. Dayton's bandits smiling behind him as they watched the little boys they raised leaving to start their journey at young men. Makino smiling as she watched her brothers leaving, while the mayor frowned disapprovingly. Garp may have accepted they become pirates, but still. Yeah. See you, Luffy. I'm going now. Ace yelled back, grinning ear to ear, wearing a yellow dress shirt unbuttoned, his signature orange hat with blue smiley and frowny faces on top, and black shorts with a knife strapped to his side. Standing beside him was Sabo, sporting a similar grin in a black long coat, a deep blue suit with a cravat, light gray dress pants, and his top hat sporting goggle on the base. Remember to read up more, Luffy. Don't want your crew to think you're nothing but brawn. I'll be stronger and smarter when I leave here in 3 years. Luffy said, just smiling at his brother's jab. Ace and Sabo chuckled to themselves before they pushed their vessel onto the open seas. Good luck, Ace. Sabo, take care, don't catch a cold. Just you wait, I'll make my name known to all soon. Ace yelled back to the farewells before turning to face the front of the ship, while Sabo waved back one final time before joining him. Soon they were but a dot on the horizon, and then they could be seen no more. 3 years later, on the shores of Fuchsia Village, Luffy bade his own farewells to his hometown, hugging his older sister, and rolling his eyes as the mayor gave him stink eye. He wore a coat similar to the one Gold D. Roger wore, only black instead of crimson, red sleeveless cardigan buttoned up, torn up navy blue jeans with a hunting knife strapped to it, dark brown hunting boots, a large leather backpack, and his hat resting on his head for once as he kept himself in full human form. He grinned, facing a seemingly random alleyway between buildings, and waved, hearing his adoptive mother bursting into tears as her bandits attempted to console her while shedding tears of their own. While it probably would have been smarter to take the old fishing boat he was offered, his gut told him the small dinghy would be more fun. Undoing the ties, Luffy rode away from his hometown, grinning and waving goodbye to his village and family. Just you wait, Ace. Sabo. Luffy thought while tensing his body as he sensed movement underneath the waves. I'll catch up to you both soon. The waters in front of the boat burst upwards as a massive sea king roared, the villagers and bandits gasping and watching the Lord of the Coast in horror as it towered over Luffy in his dinghy. Luffy clenched his fist and his muscles bulged as he tensed. Zoro. Luffy yelled as he jumped from the dinghy, closing the distance between him and the beast in an instant. Sora. Right fist cocked back, he had his left hand palm forward towards the monster, who roared undeterred from the young man's feet. Bine. Throwing his right fist forward as came to a stop only a tiny inch away from the monster. The village cried in terror, thinking Luffy had just cost himself his life, only to see the boy flash back to his dinghy unscathed, the Sea King frozen mid-roar. Splat. Luffy pulled out his hunting knife as the true outcome of Sorabine was revealed. Splat. The Lord of the Coast's head exploded like bloody fireworks backwards, and its body began floating to the surface turning a dark crimson as it bled from where its neck once was. A beat of silence passed through the village before cheers erupted for their hometown troublemaker's first victory, as it were. Some of the fishermen ran to their boats when they spotted Luffy taking some meat and rushed to catch up and grab some Sea King meat as well. Now, having sealed the meat in plastic, he kept it in his bag, pulling out a map and compass. First stop, Shell's Town. Notes. Sloop. Small sea vessel Kaiō. Bathed in blood, picture Luffy taking on Set's body physique from League of Legends. Tengoku no Bachiraku. Heaven's downfall. Luffy's eyes look like Ichigo's bleach, hollow mask form, and his arms are basically wreathed in Getsuga Tensho. Sorabine. Solar Bane. Imagine a luminescence, similar to the one Whitebeard has when he activates his powers, that explodes outwards like a shotgun blast with the end of Luffy's fist as the barrel. 155 Chapter 2. Romance Dawn. Before we get back to the story, a few notes. 1. There will be Wolfpack-like dynamics in the story. 2. When I stated there being mushy scenes, it means fluffy moments and maybe implications but no straight-up content. 3. Luffy is OOC in that he's go-to-bit brain cells and by extension a slightly different personality. I'm trying to keep him as the fun adventure-loving captain we all adore but kinda more mature-ish. 4. Also there'll be POVs from this point onward. 5. Considering changing the rating to M for more graphic depictions of violence. Still on the fence though. Red. Okay, so for any new viewers that may complain about the POVs being included into SWF, please know that it is a writing style that is implemented from Chapters 2, Romance Dawn Chapter 11, Kokoyashi Village Why did I drop it? Well, aside from the many reviews commenting on this particular choice of writing, I also just forgot I was doing POVs. Chapter 12 was written after a 0.2-week hiatus. I had midterms at the time so school was taking priority. Anyway, Chapter 12 to Chapter 15 I continued writing without POVs without realizing I had stopped. Until I got another review mentioning it and I remembered that I was doing that Useless tangent aside, I would just like to request, though I feel like I'm still going to be getting comments on this initial writing style choice anyway, that you stop bringing this up. Now a question some of you may have is, why don't you just rewrite the chapters without POV in them? In actuality, I have, and I realized after reading it that wow. This changes absolutely nothing to when I stopped doing POV. Aside from pronouns being used, scene shifts largely remain the same, internal dialogue comes up more often I guess, and that's it really. With POV without POV the story is still the same aside from pronouns and less internal dialogue from other characters being written out explicitly. If you don't like having to guess at what a character may be thinking based on what their reaction was then hooray, it's now spelled out for you more often. Now some of you may feel attacked by this passive-aggressive addition to the AN. But frankly after discussing it with others the majority of us agree that the POV thing is barely noticeable or is primarily just a case of preference. In which case, if it ain't your cup of tea, then just don't drink it or you can wait until the issue has been resolved. This is a One Piece fanfiction. It's going to be having a lot more chapters that eventually outweigh the initial 10 chapters that have this horrible writing style. Others may still be wondering why I don't just change it and may feel that I'm just lazy to bother doing it, to which I only have one response. Yeah, I am lazy, what of it? If I, and a lot of other people don't have a problem with it, then I'm just going to go on continuing the story instead of taking a long-ass hiatus just to rewrite things that really will not change in the slightest for the story. Long rant over, please stop reviewing on the POV writing style. Thank you. Yes, I know many more people will end up reviewing and commenting on this anyway, but now I feel like I've actually been able to say my piece. Romance Dawn Koby and Alvida Luffy's POV. You have got to be kidding me. I deadpanned watching a whirlpool slowly drawing my rowboat in. I close my eyes and take a nap only to wake up to this. Brilliant. I thought sarcastically as I turned to my now empty barrel that had once been stocked with apples. No one's POV. Hey, check it out. A deck crew member called out to his colleague pointing towards a barrel floating by the boat. Whistle nice eye man. Let's pull it up. What do y'all think's inside? The founder of the barrel asked as he heaved the thing up onto the ship. Damn, that's heavy, he remarked wiping his head. Don't know. Let's open her up and ahem. Both deck crew members turned to see the disapproving look of the ship's head cook who pointed at the barrel with his finger before gesturing to the pantry with his thumb. Both men grumbled as they hoisted the barrel up and brought it down into the pantry. Okay, that ain't rum, the founder said frowning turning to his companion who sported a scowl. No kiddin' Sherlock. Before the two could continue their argument however the ship lurched as the sound of cannon fire ringed in their ears. Both men paled facing each other before running out of the pantry. Above on the deck pirates board from a bright pink pirate ship, a swan figurehead sporting hard eyes, hearts on the sails and a Jolly Roger of a sideways skull with, you guessed it, a heart smack dab right on it. Yes, it is as hideous as it sounds. It is only fitting however as the owner of this ship is none other than Iron Mace Alvida, an incredibly obese woman with curly black hair reaching her upper back, freckles spread across her pudgy face and a fashion sense as bad as her taste in ship design. Said woman crashes into the lower deck ballroom where her crew already trapped the helpless passengers minus of course a certain orange-haired woman observing from the corner. Alvida, well as they say, when in Rome, taking off the beige dress she'd worn to blend in with the passengers the orangette now sported a blue shirt, maroon pants and a bandana. Let's see what you've got for me, most beautiful woman of the seas. Leaving the ballroom she made her way onto the pink monstrosity of a ship. Back in the pantry a short boy with blue-rimmed glasses and light pink hair scoped out the foods and beverages before landing on a large barrel. Must be rum. Upon reaching the barrel he tries pushing it but to no avail, that's too heavy to be rum. The boy thought to himself blinking in surprise but before he could open the thing 3 pirates walked into the room. Hiding away again Koby? Coward, one of them said wearing a blue striped shirt and bandana. No, of course not, I was just trying to move this barrel but it's really heavy. Blue Bandana cut Koby off saying, "Oh, you found the rum cabin boy?" Walking towards the barrel. "Don't worry, we'll lighten it up for ye." A tall blonde with a goatee voiced his approval. Great timing, I was getting pretty thirsty. Panicking, Koby's arm flailed about. "Wah, wait, no, Lady Alvida will kill us if she finds out." "Then you just need to keep your mouth shut, don't ya?" The shortest of the three, wearing a sleeveless purple shirt, sneered. "Right, Koby?" Ah yeah, right." Koby whimpered, backing down as Blue Bandana raised his fist to break open the barrel. "Boys were drinkin' roo." A fist burst from the barrel as a 6-foot-tall man stretched, yawning. "Da-ha hoo-ha." Smacking his lips, the man blinked at the two slack-jawed pirates before turning to Koby, wearing a similar expression as the other two, and finally landing on Blue Bandana, knocked out cold on the floor. "Luffy's pav. So who are you fellas?" I asked, turning back to the two men in front of me. "We should be asking you that," they both yelled as I closed my eyes and scrunched up my face. "Loud aren't cha." I stepped out of the barrel, ignoring them gritting their shark teeth, turning my attention back to the man on the floor. "He's gonna get sick lying down like that, you know." "Pretty dumb of him, if y'all ask me," I said, narrowing my eyes slightly as I took in their attire. "Pirates, huh? Wonder who they work under." "You did that to him, geez, didn't anyone teach these two about indoor voices?" I shook my head with closing my eyes, only to hear the distinct sound of a blade being drawn, the thrust towards me, or rather in front of me in this case. "You toyin' with us even though we're clearly pirates? Pickin' a fight, brat?" I snorted at the shore pirate statement before asking the pink-haired kid the most important question in the world. "You know where they keep the food, kid?" Pinky just continued staring at me, bug-eyed and slack-jawed. "Listen to when people are talking to you, bastard." "Damn imbecile." Both pirates drew their blades and I just turned to them as Pinky closed his eyes, oozing with fear. "A coward?" I could feel my eyes dropping as their blades descended upon me at a snail's pace. Well, Sabo did always say the East was the weakest of the four blues, I thought, fondly remembering my brainiac older brother. Reaching up, I grabbed their blades and broke them both in half, letting the broken pieces in my hand clatter down onto the floor. "If you were really trying to kill someone, shouldn't your blades actually be, you know, sharp?" I asked them, bored with half-lidded eyes. Both of their eyes popped out of their heads, zooming in on the blades. I can't tell whether to be amused or disturbed by that, I thought to myself, feeling the sweat drop appear behind my head. "Who who the heck are you?" Tick mark forming, I lifted my fist and smacked both of them on the head down into the floorboards. "Quit yelling so much, you dimwits," I reprimanded before huffing and turning back to Pinky, who flinched backwards. "Hey kid, you know where the food is?" I asked, only for the kid to continue staring blankly at me in fear. Rolling my eyes, I opened my mouth to ask again, only to smell what I'd been looking for since I woke up. Turning to my left, I grabbed my backpack out of the barrel and slung it onto my back as I opened the door to reveal rows of fruit and bread, but unfortunately no meat. "Oh well, at least there's something to eat," I shrugged before I started digging and shoveling food into my mouth like a man who hadn't eaten in weeks. "I'm Koby," I heard Pinky say behind me. Pausing briefly, I swallowed before going to reply. Makino and Sabo both drilled manners into me in Ace whenever they could, I thought, forming a fond smile on my lips. "Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet you, Koby." I turned back to pig out on whatever I could get my hands on. "How did you break their blades, Luffy-san?" "It was incredible," Koby said, approaching me, awe in his voice. "What happened to his fear?" I wondered briefly before deciding that didn't matter as much as getting information. Swallowing what I'd been able to shovel into my mouth, I turned back to Koby, disregarding his question. "This is a pirate ship, isn't it?" The pinkette paused, staggering a bit before shaking his head. "No, this is a passenger ship being raided by Iron Mace Alvida." 5 million belly Alvida?" I asked, just to be sure, frowning as Koby nodded affirmative. "That's pirates worth less than dumb baboon Hugina." Sighing at the disappointing revelation, I asked another question. "There any emergency rafts on board?" Yes, I think so." "Good, that means I can take one of those." Peering back at the pinkette, who seemed to shudder under my gaze, I asked a different question. "You part of Alvida's crew?" "If you were, you're pretty scummy getting all chummy with an enemy pirate." My coat should have been a pretty large indicator I was a pirate. It was basically a carbon copy of Gold D. Rogers' coat, for God's sakes, not to mention the fact I beat up 2 of his crewmates. "Make that 3 of his crewmates," I amended as I recalled what sleeveless purple and blonde goatee said before booking it with blue stripes. It was on that fateful day. My eyes widened. "Oh dear God, don't you dare do it." That day, I got on a boat near the outskirts to go fishing. Outwardly I maintained impassiveness, inwardly I was screaming, "I'm not interested in some sob story that's most likely going to end up just making you out to be pathetic." But it turned out to be a pirate boat that was headed towards a pirate ship. I couldn't help letting an eye twitch slip my poker face when I heard that, of all the, "It's been 2 years since, and in exchange for my life I became Alvida's cabin boy." The pinkette's eyes were downcast in depression, but at the moment I couldn't care less and spoke from the heart. Though I actually always tend to do that anyway, so really nothing out of the ordinary there. "You are the dumbest, most pathetic boy I have ever met." The kid looked like he'd been slapped before responding in a voice filled with resignation. "Just how used to comments like that are you? You're brutally honest. I am probably going to regret asking this, but you did at least try to get away at some point, right?" "And never, no. Just the thought of Alvida catching me frightens me and makes me weak in the knees." I was wrong." Koby paused and looked at me wide-eyed for a second before he slumped down into the ground after I finished. "You're the dumbest, most pathetic coward I've ever met. Man, I hate guys like you." I deadpanned, turning back to my quest of sating my hunger. No one's pawed back on the deck of the ship. Alvida smiles in satisfaction as she watches her crew send more and more of the plunder back into her ship. Smiling more than her, however, is the Orangeette, surrounded by empty chests and a bag full of gold and jewelry. Idiotic pirates. The orange-haired woman mused as she listened to their babbling from below. Alvida's good mood, however, is interrupted as she hears screams and turns to see two of her men, sleeveless purple and blonde goatee, popping out of the trapdoor leading to the pantry. Alvida-sama, there's trouble. Scowling at the two, she growled. What is it? Only getting more and more irritated as the two spoke over each other before her face contorted in rage hearing their last remark. Who are you calling a monster? Huh? Flinging her iron mace towards the two. Both men ducked, having seen it sail towards them, but Blue Bandana wasn't so lucky, being sent flying out of the hole as the projectile smacked him right in the face. The man's screams faded. A splash was heard indicating he'd fallen into the ocean. Bonk. The iron mace, having lost its momentum upon hitting Blue Bandana, fell on Purple and Blonde's heads. And no, Alvida-sama. Some weirdo popped out of a barrel down in the pantry. We think he may be a bounty hunter. A bounty hunter? Alvida repeated, glaring. Luffy's pav. If only I too had the courage to hide in a barrel and drift off somewhere on the ocean to get away. There's actually something I want to do, ya know. I stopped eating and turned to Koby. So the kid does have ambition, huh? Koby looked up at me before asking nervously. What compelled you to set sail, Luffy-san? I mean, obviously you're a pirate, but? I'm going to become the king of the pirates, I said simply with a smile, amused watching the blood drain away from Koby's face. KKK, king of the pirates? He cried so loudly my head actually started ringing. I could see him mouth a few more questions. I just nodded in response to as my ears still rung. When I get my bearings, I'm smacking him with a baguette. I thought bitterly as Koby stood up. Oh, here comes the speech. KKK, king of the pirates, is the title given to the person who obtains everything the world has to offer. That means seeking the great treasure of wealth, fame and power, the One Piece. Oh dear lord, why'd I have to get a fruit with such sensitive hearing? I thought giving a yup in response as I grinned through the pain thinking of the great treasure of the late pirate king. Yup? Pirates all over the world are after that treasure? Yeah, and so am I. My eyes now openly twitching as a tick mark formed on my head. Pretty sure steam's coming out my ear at this point as well. No way. No way. No way. No way. Never. Absolutely no way. No way. No way. There's MP way you can stand at the apex of this great pirate era. No way. No way. Alright, that's enough. The limit to my patience having been broken, I took a page out of Gramps' book and bonked Koby on the head with a fist of love. Why'd you hit me? Koby whimpered. Cuz, I wanted to. Whatever, I'm used to this. I sweat dropped at the boy's affirmation of his resignation to his pathetic situation. It's not about whether I can or not, Koby. I'm gonna do it because I want to. I said, taking of my precious straw hat, Shanks. Huh? I see Koby watching me from the corner of my eye as I continue. I've decided I want to become the king of the pirates, and if I die fighting for that, that's fine with me. Koby's eyes widened. Oh, seems I struck a chord in him. I mused to myself before I walked out of the room feeling stuffed. Now let's get a boat and get out of here. I never once thought of it that way. Do you think I could do it, Luffy-san? If I'm prepared to die for it? I paused at the door and turned back to Koby. Do what, Koby? Do you think even someone like me could join the Marines? Marines? A small smile tugged at my lips at the image of Gramps trying to beat the cowardice out of Koby with fists of love. Yes, a Marine. My dream is catching bad guys. Koby cried as he stood up and turned to face me, clenching his fists. It's been my dream ever since I was little. Do you think I can do it? Least out here the echo doesn't kill me as much. How am I supposed to know? I asked back rhetorically, already expecting Koby to drone onwards on his own. My eyes flickered upwards as I sensed malicious intent seeping from the ceiling. That's one nasty voice, I thought, flickering to the stairs that lead upstairs, also filled with similarly unsavory voices. No, I will do it. If I'm gonna be a cabin boy for the rest of my life, then I'll break out of this hell and catch even Alvida-san. No, Alvida. As if that was her cue, Alvida crashed down from the ceiling in all her hideous glory. Wow, she's even more repulsive in real life. I thought, my face breaking and contorting into a grimace for a brief second before I composed myself once more. You're gonna team up with him to catch who? Huh, Koby. The fat tub of lard grilled Koby, who began cowering again as Alvida stared down at him with a sneer, her iron mace resting on her shoulder. Swords raised and pointed towards me from behind my back. More dull blades? Really? Not a single competent swordsman here, huh? My eyes became half-lidded as I became bored once again. Hey, you're not pirate hunter Zoro. Alvida smirked at me. Zoro? Koby. Said boy flinched as the hag turned her attention to him. Who's the most beautiful of all on these seas? Of course that would be, okay, this kid really needs some help to get some confidence. I internally sighed before smiling at what I was planning on doing. Oi Koby, who's the obese, oily witch? I asked, putting on my best dumb face while cackling internally, watching every single person's, even Alvida's, jaw drop at my comment. Oh, obese? Wee witch? NN, not good. The sound of gritting teeth could be heard as Alvida's face popped tick marks like it was fireworks. You runt. Alvida shrieked as she brought down her club only to hit the ground as I shaved towards Koby. Time to go. Huh? Koby voiced his surprise as to him we were suddenly on deck. Blinking once, the pirates got over their shock and charged me all at once. Might as well take them all out at once. I threw Koby to the side so he wouldn't be caught in the hail of blades, my eyes catching the eyes of an orange-haired woman as she walked out a door on another ship, her eyes widening before turning away as if not wanting to see the blood that would be spilled if I were a normal man. Luffy. I heard Koby cry before the sun was blocked out and swords smacked into me, making a cacophony of metal hitting skin noises. Not so tough after all, huh, you cheeky. Alvida's words were cut as gasps rung out amongst the pirates who'd realized they hadn't penetrated my skin. Kaio Abita. My body glowed briefly as I grew taller, reaching my Gramps' impressive 9 feet 5 inches height, my lean-toned body blowing up into a robust muscled one, my ear popping out, pushing my hat off my head and onto my back. Thankfully, after many years of training, my tail didn't pop out. That would have been uncomfortable with my coat. I mused, crossing my arms and tensing them further inwards, wisps of black flames surrounding them. Donaru. Before I thrust them outwards, shouting to the stars. Tasuki. A dome of black flame blades burst forth in a 2-meter radius. A beat of silence before Alvida's crew started dropping like flies. What AA are you? One of the few pirates who hadn't charged asked, backing up, just grit her teeth, seemingly unfazed, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Least she isn't a coward, I thought as I observed the orange-haired woman out of the corner of my eye shake her head before running off with a bag. She recovered rather quickly. Probably more concerned with getting away, I mused to myself, turning away from the thief. You ate a devil fruit, didn't you? Alvida asked, her grip on her mace tightening. What was your first clue? The ears. Turning back Alvida, I crossed my arms and looked down at her, smiling internally as she realized I was regarding her as inferior. Her few conscious crew members stayed away, swords lowered. While I prefer they stand up and fight, I can't exactly fault them for recognizing the gap in our strengths. Listen when people are speaking, you arrogant dog. Oops. Didn't realize she was giving monologue. Then again, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I pondered as I heard the sound of a boat hitting water. The thief gets away while the pirates fight. Opportunistic, quick to adapt to the situation, and clever enough not to get caught. I looked back to Alvida, who looked like Volcano, as she had noticed I'd completely ignored her again. I can't tell whether Makino would be amused or disappointed in this scenario, snorting as the hag opened her mouth. You dare ignore me? Don't you know WHOIAM? I know you're oozing with insecurity. The one person in the world with a face even their mother couldn't love? Paling white as sheets, Alvida's crew shuddered under Alvida's withering gaze, which had become so red and filled with tick marks it looked like a wrinkly rotten tomato. Koby. Turning towards the pinkhead, who'd also become pale as a sheet. Who am I? Educate this mangy mutt. Flinching, the boy stuttered. Alvida-sama is of course teeth. Catching his eyes, I saw them fill with something other than fear that caused me to grin. The biggest, fattest whale in the world. Maybe there's hope for you after all, I chuckled as Alvida completely lost it. You damn brat. Raising her club, Koby closed his eyes, accepting his fate. Too bad for him, he's grown on me. Grabbing the mace and pulling it towards me, I cocked my fist back before socking the tub of lard across the face and into the floorboards with a resounding crash. Boom. K-ha. I smirked, hearing her gasp of pain before tilting my head to the right, the distinct sound of a cannon whistling through the air, followed by the voices of stuck-up self-righteousness. All right, Koby. We're out of here, I said, pulling the pinkhead towards me as the cannonball whizzed past where he previously was. Eep. Eep. I look at him incredulously before shaking my head at his red, embarrassed face before turning towards the only remaining evacuation boat. Looks like my luck's turnee. I sidestepped a cannonball that was on a straight collision course with me, only to groan in exasperation. Of frickin' course the damn thing would land on the boat. Turning towards the direction I'd meant to go in before this whole mess started, I tossed Koby over my shoulder. Zoro. A certain thief's pav. A few minutes ago, I closed my eyes as I watched the pirates descend on the tall stranger with a straw hat, shaking as unpleasant memories resurfaced, that horrid creature's laughter ringing in my ears. Shashashasasha. Shashashashashasha. Clenching my fist, I grit my teeth. Blasted pirates, to hell with all of them. Tasuki. I opened my eyes to see the man facing the sky, arms spread as a dome of black flames expanded outwards. What the hell? My grip on my treasure tightened as I took in the man's new 9'5" height and dog ears. Okay, yeah, no, I'm getting out of here. Taking advantage of the Alvida pirates' focus on the strange man, I ran out with the gold. Jumping onto a decent-sized sailboat, I lowered down to sea before cursing as first noticed the marine ship coming only a few minutes away. Listen when people are speaking, you arrogant dog. Well, that bitch is pissed. I couldn't help the smirk that formed on my face as I unfurled the sails and headed towards the next town on my list. I get that map, I'm golden, I smiled as more profanities came out of Alvida's mouth. You'd think she'd noticed the marine ship just a few clicks away from cannon range, I mused to myself before I heard a crash like something just broke through a floorboard on the ship. Before I could turn and figure out what the heck that was, a cannonball landed a bit too close for comfort. Standing up to the start rowing the boat lurched as the strange man with dog ears appeared, a pink-haired boy on his shoulders. Talk later, run first, was all he said before he grabbed the paddles and started rowing. Now normally when a strange man boards my ship as I make a getaway, I kick them where the sun don't shine and throw them overboard. While thinking of doing just that, however, another cannonball dropped into the seas right behind me, so without much choice I, and the pink-haired boy, who seemed to grasp the situation as well, took up our own pair of paddles and made to get the hell out of there. Watching the passenger ship being torn apart by cannon fire slowly fade in the distance, I turned to look at the strange man again, taking in his clothes with a grimace. A pirate? As if sensing a gaze on him, he looked up at me questioningly with a quirked eyebrow. Something wrong, miss? Najiko. I wasn't about to give him my real name, but he seemed to have noticed the cover-up as his eyes narrowed in suspicion, but I just continued before he could voice it out. Why don't you tell me what's wrong with this situation, pirate? He blinked as a brief look of surprise came upon his face before he smiled as if to cover it up. You planned on making a clean getaway while all the treasure you plundered from Alvida only to have another pirate appear on your ship. While the statement seemed like a question, it wasn't one. Smart for a pirate, I said, slowly reaching towards the collapsible staff I kept in front of me hidden from view. What happened next left me silenced and pale as a sheet. I blinked for one moment, and then he's gone without a trace, the pink-haired boy also blinking confused before he turned to look at me. No, not at me, through me, I realized, but stopped moving as the temperature seemed to drop to absolute zero. Slowly turning, I come face to face with the man now leaning over me, staring dead into my eyes. That alone would have been intimidating enough. The massive black wolf made of dark flames with golden irises certainly didn't help. Gulping, I could only sit still as the man inched closer to the side of me, face his cheek only millimeters away from my own, the jet black wolf seemingly doing the same. He inhaled deeply before he breathed out huskily next to my ear. Now I blushed hot red despite myself as I realized what he'd done, not really registering the wolf has disappeared as he exhaled. Lifting up my arm to sock the perv on the head for smelling me, I stopped in shock at the next words that came out of his mouth. I'm sorry for whatever those fishmen did to you. Luffy's paws slowly standing back up straight, I walked past Najiko, who seemed to turn into a statue, and adjusted the sails to take us back on track towards Shell's town. I'd never forget that scent, I thought, recalling the time Gramps showed up carrying it. Oh, that's probably from Jimbei, Gramps said after I asked him why he smelled like shark. Far as warlords go, he's probably the only one with noble causes in mind. I blinked at that in shock. Don't get me wrong, Luffy, he's still a pirate to me when it boils down to it. Rolling his eyes, Gramps took a seat next to me with a faraway look in his eyes. But I can't hate a man who'd sacrificed so much for his family and his country. Jimbei, huh? I thought absent-mindedly of what the Knight of the Sea may truly be like. Well, guess I'll find out when I meet him. Leaving it at that, I disabled my bathed in blood technique and returned to my 6-foot-tall height, but kept my ears out as they were. Luffy-san. Turning my attention to Koby, I nodded for him to continue. What did you say to her? She's been silent since you came back to this side of the ship, staring at you. Shifting my focus to Najiko, I could see that she was indeed quiet and rather reserved, but was turned away as I faced her. Doesn't really matter since I already noticed, but sure, let's pretend I didn't. Putting my backpack down, I pulled out my compass and handed it as well as the rope controlling the sails to Koby. Keep going north. We're headed for Shell's town. Nodding in confirmation, Koby turned to give me and the woman privacy to talk. I sighed, scratching the back of my head, walking towards the woman who wasn't trying to hide her stare at this point, now doing so with open hostility. Taking a seat in front of her, I waited for what she had to say first. Who are you? Monkey D. Luffy. Why were you on that ship? Boat got caught in a whirlpool and I jumped into my barrel hoping for the best. Woke up later to find Alvida raiding the passenger ship that took me aboard, probably thinking the barrel was full of alcohol. I summarized and smiled as she blinked incredulously at me before narrowing her eyes and going forward. How did you know about the fishman? I ate the Inu no Ami, which lets me take on the traits of canines. As such, I was able to smell their scent on you. A bit late, but sorry for the invasion of your private space. I said, scratching my head sheepishly. That seemed to catch her off guard again, but probably more because of my apology rather than my devil fruit. Yeah, sure. She trailed off as if deep in thought before she sighed. Just to be clear, am I your prisoner? Or are you going to keep breaking my image of pirates even further? I raised my eyebrow at her last statement, but decided it was probably a question for another day. Depends. She tensed. You heading to Shell's town as well? Yes. Then you're a fellow passenger. If you'd been heading somewhere else, then I'd have probably said you were a prisoner until Koby and I get off there, after which you'd be free to go. She swallowed before continuing on. What are you planning to do to him when you get off there? From what I remember, there's supposed to be a marine base there, and since Koby wants to be a marine, I thought I'd drop him off. Maybe make a scene to show he was just a defenseless kid being dragged around by a pirate so they'd sympathize with him. I disregarded Koby's gasp and the scent of tears forming. Koby, if you blonk me later, I swear to God you'll get another taste of a fist of love again. Silently promising what would probably happen after this talk, I watched as the woman opened and closed her mouth like a fish, blinking rapidly. But wasn't he on an enemy pirate's crew? Not by choice. Honestly, the kid's story for how he ended up as the bowling ball's cabin boy was so pathetic I couldn't see him as an enemy even if I wanted to. Koby sinking onto his knees as a cloud of depression hovered above his head. So that's why you helped him? You didn't see him as a threat? She seemed to energize at that claim. Gotcha. Comic bubble practically appearing behind her as the thinks she's figured me out. I helped him because he has a dream and, more importantly, was willing to sacrifice all he had left for that dream. Shock was plastered on her face. She gaped at me as I continued. If you were a stranger but had a dream and the will to see it through, you'd become my friend, if you were willing to put your life on the line to achieve it? I looked her dead in the eyes as I finished. I'll set sail with you to the ends of the earth to see it come true. We could be rivals for the same dream or enemies for choosing different paths, it doesn't matter. As long as you have the will to chase that dream until you breathe your last breath, I will carve your name as my brother or sister unto my soul forevermore. Koby openly wept behind me as his grip on the sail tightened and his eyes glistening with cascading tears. If you cried like that in a lake, it'd become so salty it'll turn into an ocean, I thought, sweat dropping. Call me out in a review if you get the reference. The orange-haired woman just stared at me with her mouth parted in disbelief before her body began shaking. Then, as if completely forgetting what I was capable of, grabbed me by my coat and screeched. What kind of pirate are you? I scrunched up my face as my ears rang in agony. Deep breaths, Luffy. You got yourself into this mess when you got too nosy. It's only right I let the lady vent. I thought to myself, calling upon every lesson Makino ever drilled into me and whatever patience I could muster. Maybe that speech was bit too against her perceptions about pirates. Pirates are plunderers, rapists, and murderers. They don't let their enemies live. They don't care about honoring their foes. They only live for themselves and for no one else. Tears began cascading down her eyes, but unlike Koby's tears of admiration and respect, these were filled anger, anguish, and despair. Pirates killed my mother in front of me. Her eyes were shadowed as her voice softened and her grip on my coat loosened. Amidst her rant, she'd ended up straddling me, her sitting up on my stomach as I lay on the floorboards of the boat. Pirates can't be good or heroic. They can't think of anyone but themselves. They shouldn't have any mercy or love for anything. Choking on her words, she sobbed, unable to go on, as it seemed her whole world had shattered. That escalated quickly. I stopped that train of thought, as even I couldn't brush off and be sarcastic about something like this. I pushed myself up and wrapped an arm around the girl's waist. Let it all out, Najiko, I said as she had tensed before breaking down even further as I brought my other hand up to her head and pushed her towards my chest. I rocked back and forth, whispering words of comfort as she continued to break down well into the night. Thankfully, Koby stayed focused on navigating us towards Shell's town. The girl and I stayed like until the sun set and the moon rose. Her sobs had lessened and become hiccups after a while, and now she would just sniffle occasionally. At some point she'd wrapped her arms around me, pushing herself deeper into my chest, but I didn't voice any comment of it. Plunderers, rapists, and murderers, huh? Just what kind of scum did you come across? Eventually I had to separate the two of us, and I did so gently, removing her arms from me and seating her down to ponder over things. Walking towards Koby, the boy turned to me with a smile when I stopped by his side. You were really weird for a pirate, Luffy-san. I gave a half-hearted smile before ruffling the kid's hair. I'm what a pirate should be like, Koby. What pirates used to be like. Taking the ropes of the sail and locking them in a set position, I walked towards a chest where I smelled the distinct scent of alcohol, cloth, metal, and some non-perishable meats. Opening the chest, I smiled, knowing I'd been spot on save for the addition of water skins, which were honestly a welcome bonus. Bringing out the alcohol lamp, tripod, and pan to the center of the small vessel, I dug the approximately 5 kilos of sea king meat I'd saved from the Lord of the Coast out of it, as well as some butter, salt, and pepper. Cooked meat is good, but it's so much better even with just basic seasoning, I chuckled, watching Koby's mouth water as the scent of grilled sea king wafted through the air. Hell, even Najiko was drooling a bit as the wind blew its delectable scent towards her. Bringing out some bread I'd taken from the passenger ship, I broke them apart and handed portions to the other two, along with cuts of grilled sea king. Dinner was a silent affair as we all dug into the juicy sandwiches. Knowing Koby was probably dead tired, and Najiko similarly, so I volunteered to keep watch in case the weather decided to mess with them or someone else came along picking a fight. It's certainly not how I pictured my first day on the seas to go, but then again, what's life without its twists and turns? I mused, staring at the night sky, stars twinkling above. Brr. I looked away from the skies and turned to Najiko, who hadn't fallen asleep yet and shivering as cold sea winds passed by while Koby was conked out snoring. Normally this should be reserved for when I court someone, but I shrugged. What the hell, why not? Taking off my coat, and I approached the shivering woman, who opened her eyes as I stood in front of her. She tensed a bit, sitting up staring at me defiantly before I crouched and slowly threw my coat over her shoulders and brushed a strand of hair that had stuck to the side of her face backwards over her ears. Even in the dead of night I could see her blush. Good night, Najiko, I said, standing up. Nami. I paused my ascent and looked at her with a raised eyebrow, but she just turned away, still red. My name's Nami, not Najiko, though I assume you knew that from the beginning. Chuckling, I replied. Yeah, I did. Smiling, I stood up and took an appearance. Short tangerine orange hair, large warm chocolate brown eyes, a sharp adorable nose, plump pouty lips, and smooth pale skin. If not for her aversion towards pirates, I wouldn't have minded making her my Luna Wolf. I walked away chuckling to myself. What am I thinking? I barely even know this woman. Good night, Nami. Good night, Luffy. I didn't even need to look at her to know she was smiling as she told me that. 155 Chapter 3. Romance Dawn. 2. Notes. 1. Yes, the rating of the story is now M for future depictions of graphic violence. No, there will be no explicit sexual encounters in this work, only implications, X. Pushing her into the bedroom, I reveled in her moans and writhing form as I made her mine. 2. There will be warnings at the beginning of every chapter that contains gore elements. 3. If you consider blood and guts spilled, heads being eaten, and people being torn in half horror, then this story's third genre is horror. Know this chapter is not where any of the three happen. Those take place later on, much later on. Romance Dawn 2 Pirate Hunter. Roranoa Zoro Nami's Pav. Shashashashashashasha. The voice laughed tauntingly from the darkness as I was forced to watch my mother smiling sadly at me as she was held at gunpoint. Her left arm torn and bloody from the attack she suffered at the hands of that monster. You can't save her, little kitten. I love you, Nami, Najiko. No, God, please no. Please let her go. Belmir. Moom. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't work. I tried to move, but my legs remained frozen and unresponsive. I could only cry as the flintlock's trigger was pushed inwards. Silly little kitten, you can only sit back and watch the show. Sha. Bang. My mother's head snapped backwards as the bullet pierced through her skull and her life ended. Her eyes, once full of love and live now glossy and lifeless, stared at me, a bullet hole in between her eyes, blood running down staining the ground crimson red. I love you, Nami, Najiko. My mother's last words rang in my ears as the scene shifted. No, please no more, someone please save me. I cry out in my head, my mouth still refusing to work as I watch more and more of the people I loved attacked and killed. Jen-san, Najiko, Dr. Nako. Shasha, you'll never escape, my little kitten. You'll work for me till you're old and gray, noting but skin and bones. The monster promised, relishing as more tears ran down my face. I'll never escape from here, I'll never. If you have a dream, I'll be your friend. Gasping as I hear the new voice, I turn, my body listening for once as I look and see a tall man built with lean but toned muscles wearing a black and gold coat over a buttoned-up red cardigan, torn marine blue jeans, a hunting knife at his side and a straw hat on his head, but his face obscured. If you're willing to fight for it, I'll set sail with you to see it through. Shashasha, foolish boy, this woman is mine. No, she's not. She's not yours, she's not mine, she's not anybody's. The man said, standing up to the monster that's plagued me for 8 years without an ounce of fear. She's not a tool, she's my friend. I felt warm inside hearing his words and tried to see his face, but my body returned to being unresponsive. Thankfully the man seemed to know what I wanted and he turned to me. A pair of dark black eyes stared back at me before everything started shaking and I opened my eyes to see the same pair of eyes from my dreams now staring back at me. Blushing blood red at his closeness, I didn't think twice and just swung my fist. Instead of catching it, however, like I expected him to, Luffy went flying off the boat and into the ocean. Ah! Najiko, why? Koby yelled, focus on the sail, Koby. I said, standing up still blushing only to pale as I heard Koby's next words. Luffy can't swim, Nojiko. It's the curse of eating devil fruits, they become sitting ducks when they hit the water. Next thing I know I'm swimming back up towards the boat, the 6-foot-tall man I dreamed about and probably have a severe crush on losing oxygen fast in my arms. Luffy's paw spitting out water and gasping for air, I'm on my hands and knees glaring at Nami, who turned her face away in shame. We never speak about this, to anyone. I growled, standing up and taking my cardigan off. I ignored the gasp of surprise from Nami and just squeezed the water out of my cardigan. I'd suggest you do the same with your shirt and shorts, Nami. Just use my coat to cover up while they dry, Koby, and I will just keep our eyes forward, right, Koby? Why yes, Luffy-san, beat red himself. Koby didn't sound so convincing, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Then again, she actually packs quite a punch. I rubbed the side of my jaw that got hit from earlier. Opening up my bag, I grabbed a silver dress shirt and black dress pants to change into before stripping my pants off as well, leaving me in my boxers. Eep. I didn't need to turn around to know Nami's face was probably tomato red right now. I pinched my nose to stop smelling the scent she was giving off before deciding to just breathe through my mouth for the sake of my sanity. How much longer do you think till we get there, Koby? I asked, wanting to get my mind off of Nami. Another day at least, Luffy. ITSKED in annoyance. The Sea King meat I'd saved up had all been consumed the evening before and the non-perishable foods would barely be enough for 3 normal people, but substituting himself into that equation? Yeah, forget it. Another day. We can get there in 3 hours. Blinking in surprise, I rounded back to her, forgetting what I'd said minutes earlier, and was treated to seeing her in a pearly white undergarments, my coat covering most of her body but still open at the front. Oi! Nami yelped, closing my coat and blocking the mind-crumbling view. I think it's safe to say I blanked out completely, since the next thing I know Nami's bonked me on the head, reprimanding me for just staring blankly into space while she'd explained how they could get to Shell's Town in 3 hours. Long story short, we made it to Shell's Town in 3 hours, our clothes thankfully now dry, though I decided to just keep my silver shirt and pants on. Another day. TCH, you guys are amateurs, Nami said smugly, getting off the sailboat and onto the docks. I just shook my head at her good-natured jab and slung my backpack on before following her, Koby not far behind. What did you want to come to Shell's Town for again, Nami? I asked, deciding to break the silence as we'd walked from the port to the plaza without ever speaking a word. Oh, there's a map I want from someone here. I need it for, my goal. Goal? Not dream. Nami seemed to take a faraway look as she smiled sadly for a second before masking it in a face of confidence. Yeah, goal not dream. My dream comes after I've dealt with this. So you do have a dream? I asked, smiling, now interested in what it could be, and I could tell she was equally enthusiastic to share it. I dream of traveling the world and drawing a map of all of it. Inwardly I grinned at the scale of such a dream but kept my interested smile outwardly. Doesn't seem like the kind of dream a thief would have. I'm a thief to achieve my goal. To accomplish my dream I plan on doing what I do best as a navigator. Now that I openly grinned at stopping my walk as I turned to her fully. Join my crew. Nami staggered a bit as not expecting it, but she recovered quickly enough and gave me contemplating look. I hate pirates. I raised my eyebrow at her half-hearted response, still grinning as I could see her desire to actually take me up on my offer. But you aren't a pirate, at least not the kind I hate. I'll think about it, Luffy. Seeing as our conversation would end at that, I decided to ask Koby about that pirate hunter Alvida had mentioned. Hey Koby, who was that pirate hunter Alvida mentioned? Zoro? Gasp. Blinking, I raised my eyebrow at everyone in the plaza, who looked at me like I just kicked their puppy. Nami herself lost her pondering look and seemed confused by the townspeople's reaction as well. Koby on the other hand, well. LLL Luffy-san. You've never heard of RR Roronoa Zoro? Roronoa Zoro. The name is kind of familiar. I think I recognize it from a newspaper. Koby seemed less incredulous now but still stared at me as if I was an idiot. He's infamous as a relentless and bloodthirsty bounty hunter. They say he never misses his mark and that he's even a demon in human form. Slicing and dicing his targets with his 3 blades practicing Santoryu. Sounds like this Roronoa Zoro's a strong and dedicated guy. Koby's mouth dropped and his eyes bugged as he seemed to figure out what that comment entailed. Why you're not planning on recruiting him, are you? My grin was his cue for despair. I laughed watching him sputter incoherently trying to convince me otherwise. Nami just looked at me like I was insane. Well, considering the description, she's not really far off. Forget it, Luffy. That beast has been captured by the Marines on this island already. Well, that's disappointing. Doesn't seem that strong anymore. I paused slightly facing forwards disinterested before turning back to Koby. Wait, this island? Yeah. Roronoa Zoro's being kept here in this island's marine base and under the leadership of Captain Axehand Morgan. Gasp. What the? I looked around as the townspeople seemed even paler at the mention of the marine captain than when Zoro was brought up. It didn't take for me to realize why that was probably the case. Oh, Koby's not gonna like what he sees when he meets this axe dude. Nami and Koby both looked equally lost as to why the townspeople seemed to fear the mention of the marine captain. Zoro I could understand, but why are the people afraid of the captain? Oh Koby, you naive fool. I shook my head before turning towards the marine base. I could tell him, but he'd probably just deny it, not wanting his dreams to be crushed. Better he sees for himself that the world isn't so black and white. Upon reaching the gates of the marine base, I sweat dropped seeing Koby's eyes welling up with tears. Nami seemed to have a similar reaction before going deep in thought as she observed the base. Guess the map she's looking for is here. Oh, I'm finally here. Sniffle. I can finally live my dream. There was a pause of silence. This is where we part ways, Luffy saw. Luffy San, what are you doing? I rolled my eyes as I climbed the wall of the marine base, Nami following in suit. Now let's see, where's Roronoa? Luffy-san, I doubt they'd keep him out in the... Found him. I jumped off and ran to another section of the wall so I could see the pirate hunter from the front. There he is. Yeah right, they wouldn't keep someone like that, huh? Koby's mouth went slack as he saw a man bound to a post wearing a dark green bandana and a green haramaki. Nami popped up next to me, furrowing her eyebrows upon seeing Roronoa. Why is he being kept out in the open like that? If we untie those ropes we could probably get away without anyone realizing till it was too late. I commented offhandedly, sensing the majority of the Marines being in a different part of the base. Are you crazy? If you untie him he'll kill you? I doubt that. The man's been starved for 2 weeks at the very least. I lost my smile as I took in the outlines of the bound man's ribs through his shirt. Nami's eyes shadowed as if my comment brought up bad memories. Make that 3 weeks, I thought bitterly as my suspicions for the kind of marine captain this Morgan was were confirmed. Koby opened his mouth to comment but got cut off. Hey, you guys. You're an eyesore. Looks like he was awake after all. Get lost. Zoro growled and Koby jumped in fright before turning to me. Oh brother, here we go. Luffy-san. There's no way you could survive with him on your crew. I had ignored Koby, turning my attention towards him, or rather behind him, as a wooden ladder was propped up against the wall and a little brown-haired child climbed up. She shushed Koby, looking right to left a few times before she dropped a rope and climbed down carrying what looked rice balls. Realizing the girl began running towards Zoro, Koby began sputtering towards me again, begging me to grab the girl to save her, while Nami just kept quiet and observed. Least someone's able to keep their cool. What do you want? You must be hungry. I made you some rice balls, the girl said cheerfully to Zoro, who looked down on her with a glare. Do you want to get killed, pipsqueak? Scram. Zoro growled. Koby yelped in fear as Nami grumbled under her breath about Zoro's behavior towards the girl brining him food. Undeterred by Zoro's apparent anger, the girl ventured on, you haven't eaten this whole time. Presenting the rice balls she made towards him, she finished. Here, it's my first time making them, but I worked hard to make them. Zoro looked surprised and even a little touched for a second, but he put on a mask of defiance and anger. I ain't hungry. You're an eyesore. Get the hell out of here. The girl's smile became a frown, confused. But I don't want him. Don't make me kick your ass. Koby started biting his nails as his teeth clattered and Nami leveled a glare that if looks could kill would have definitely put Zoro 6 feet under. Me meanwhile? I turned to the left of the little girl and Zoro, sensing a few men approaching. So that's his game, huh? I smiled, realizing what Zoro was trying to do. It's not nice to be a bully. Zoro grimaced before gritting his teeth, turning and realizing who had entered the field. You seem surprisingly well. Roronoa Zoro, a man with long face, double butt chin and blonde hair that covered the top of his head like a rugby ball. He wore a purple dress suit, shirt unbuttoned at the top, letting the collar leave an open view of his scrawny chest and golden bead necklace. Oh good, the Marines arrived. The girl will be safe now. Koby sighed in relief while Nami turned to look at the newcomers critically. I don't think you should get your hopes up, Koby, said boy, turned towards Nami confused. Ooh. Rice ball. Blonde rugby ball snatched one of the rice balls from the girl's hands, before his face scrunched up in disgust. Ah, one too damn sweet. These are full of sugar. The scrawny man exclaimed. You're supposed to use salt for rice balls. But I thought they might taste better sweet. The scrawny man punched the rice balls out of the girl's hand and began stomping on them. Take this, and this. Stop, stop. The little girl cried as she watched the rice balls being stomped into the dirt. How horrible. Scum. Nami grit her teeth and clenched her fist, looking like she wanted to go down there to wallop the man. I kept my silence, observing as Zoro stared at the ruined rice balls and the little girl whimpered. I worked so hard on them. Sniffle. Pulling out a piece of parchment, blonde rugby ball stared condescendingly down on the kid. Those who help criminals will be executed, Marine Captain, Morgan. The girl sat up straight and stared at the man in fear. Hee. Looks like even lil brats know how scary my dad is. Dad? Nami looked downright murderous while Koby looked like he was having a bad dream. Not surprising since his image of Marines were as righteous, law-abiding protectors and not conniving, sniveling scum. That's Captain Morgan's son. The captain's son turned to a Marine behind him. You. Throw this kid out. The Marine looked shocked at the order and the scum didn't seem to like that. Facing the Marine, he grabbed him by the front of his uniform. I said, throw her over the wall, or can you not follow my orders? Don't make me tell my dad. Son of a. I pulled Nami back down and shook my head telling her to not interfere. She glared at me but backed off and sat back down only to face back towards the Marine in shock. Yes. Right away, sir. The girl backed up as the Marine grabbed her. No. The girl cried as the Marine whispered back, I'm sorry little one. Curl yourself into a ball. That should minimize the damage. The Marine looked disgusted of himself but fear seemed to outweigh his self-loathing as he tossed the girl over the wall past us not facing the ground in shame. Nami tensed as the girl sailed past us and Koby was too shell-shocked to react after seeing what the Marine did. Nami prepared to jump but stopped when she noticed I was gone. Like hell am I letting this happen? Flashing over the little girl I held her close to my chest as I back on my feet. You okay? Ah yes. Thank you. The girl said smiling at me, Koby and Nami coming towards us. Are you hurt? I can't believe how horrible that guy is. I stood back up and reached for my hat that had flown off my head and now fluttered in the wind, the string around my neck, the only thing keeping it from flying away. Nami looked at me with a flurry of complicated emotions. First she meets a pirate who's more into adventure and friendship rather than pillaging and murder, then she sees this from the one supposed to be protecting citizens from pirates. I put my hat back on my head before heading flashing back to see Blondie taunting Zoro. You sure are stubborn about staying alive. Yeah, I will live the full month. Snorting, blonde rugby ball walked back from where he came from. Good luck with that. Laughing all the while. 10 days left, you know. Assuming can live that long, the annoying, stuck-up blonde finally made it out of the gate leaving the bound Roronoa Zoro alone. So you're the famous demon pirate hunter Zoro stopped staring at the ground and faced me with a glare and scowl. You're still here? For a guy made out to be a demon in human form, this is a pretty pathetic sight you know. Unamused the bound man's eyes narrowed in annoyance. Mind your own business. Walking closer towards him I could see that he was indeed starving, and clearly hasn't showered recently either. I'd probably starve in 3 days if I were in your situation. I got more spirit than you. The scowl turned into a grin as he continued, I will survive this ordeal. This I swear. You're an interesting one, Roronoa. I chuckled. I paused before confronting him. You were afraid, weren't you? Damn, he looked offended at that. For the little girl I mean. Not for yourself. I amended quickly. I have a devil fruit that busted beyond all heck yet this guy's glare still put me on edge. Seemingly pacified at the correction he turned away refusing to face me. Damn brat wouldn't have ended up hurt if she didn't bother coming here. I smiled as, try as he might, I could hear the guilt through the tough guy act. Good thing I caught her before she landed on the dirt then. Thank you. I nodded before turning to walk away. Wonder what he'd be able to do if I did get him on my crew. Wait. Stopping in my tracks I turned to see him staring at the ruined rice balls. Don't tell me, he's not actually going to. Could you pick that up for me? You do realize that's mostly dirt, right? Just shut up and give it here. I could feel the tick mark form on my head as I stood up and fed him the muddy rice ball. Coughing as he chewed through the meal I could only sigh. Told you so. It was good. I am not ashamed to say my jaw dropped at that. Thanks for the food. Tell the girl, it was the best rice ball I've ever had. This guy. I grinned and nodded my confirmation before jumping out the field. Later I found the little girl, Koby and Nami inside a restaurant. Retelling the story I smiled fondly as the little girl lit up in joy. Nami carried a similar smile and giggling as she patted the girl's head as she went. He liked it, he liked it. Is Zoro really as evil as the rumors say? Koby said skeptically. No, Zoro's not bad. All three of us turned to the girl who now looked downward sadly. After all, he let himself get crucified in our place. In your place? What are you talking about? I questioned, Nami and Koby also looking curious. It's all because of Helmeppo's fault. He's Captain Morgan's son. Apparently one late afternoon Helmeppo was walking his pet dog around town. Out of the way. Make way for my adorable pet, Helmeppo said smugly walking behind the rabid-looking dog, a sword resting on his shoulder. The dog had burst into the restaurant. Rika's, the little girl, mother owned. Scaring the patrons and servers, the rabid dog wolfed down on whatever caught its fancy. Rika, not liking the dog stealing the customer's food, swat her broom at it, but it only ignored her for the most part. Hey, you gonna complain about what my pet's doing? Rika. Stop that. Rika's mother, Ririka, reprimanded, concern on her face at seeing the son of the captain enter the restaurant. We'll get in trouble if we go against him. Deciding Rika would be a tastier snack, the mutt leapt towards her only for a chair to come crashing into the canine mid-leap. Oh, crap. He's in trouble now, two patrons commented watching Zoro step into the scene. Who the hell are you? Gasp. Are you, pirate hunter Zoro? Approaching the swordsman who was sitting calmly at the bar, his 3 swords resting against the counter. And if I am? Why is a pirate hunter defying the marine? Helmeppo asked, waving his word up and down towards Zoro as if threatening him. Rika had been pulled away by her mother before she could get caught in the crossfire. Just shut up and let me eat in peace. Not even turning to him, Zoro continued eating. Why you? Charging forward, Helmeppo brought his blade down in a downward slash, only for said blade to be kicked up and stuck into the ceiling and himself be sent flying as Zoro punched him right across the face. Zoro approached the man and drew his blade, pointing them at Helmeppo. You're annoying me. Both you and your pet. Shivering and muttering incoherently, Helmeppo chuckled nervously as he looked at Rika and her mother. You do realize that if my dad finds out about this, they're gonna get executed for sure. Ririka clutched her child closer to her in fear while Zoro just continued glaring at Helmeppo. Let's make a deal. You get strung up in place of this woman and her child, for a month. Yeah, a month. Standing up, Helmeppo still seemed anxious watching the pirate hunter. If you can survive for 1 month, I'll let you live too. What'd you say? 1 month. Letting his sword go, Zoro allowed Helmeppo and his men to take him to the field to be crucified. It's been 3 weeks since then, Rika said, clenching her fists close to her chest. Helmeppo punches and kicks him while he's tied up. That was the last coherent thing Rika said before she broke down sobbing. Nami pulled the weeping girl closer and moved her hand up and down the Rika's back, trying to comfort the poor child. I see. Koby stared silently as the sobbing girl curled further into Nami's comforting embrace. I looked away and couldn't help the smile coming to my face. I believe I found my first mate. Crash. I was pulled out of my thoughts as the sound of plates breaking came from a table near the bar. I'm hungry. Let us all eat for free, Helmeppo demanded, placing his foot on the table smugly. 2 marine officers standing behind me looking like they really didn't want to be there. Hey, bring me some booze. Quit dawdling. Hurry it up, geez, can't this guy ever shut up? I walked closer to see the man-child through the sea of people who watched at him nervously. I'm getting bored, so I've decided to execute Zoro tomorrow. I'm sorry, what? A tick formed as I heard this guy laugh condescendingly. Look forward to it, everyone. Rika cried even harder as Nami started shaking, looking at the declaring murder as if he was describing the weather. Koby looked horrified towards Helmeppo, and that certainly added fuel to the fire as I flashed in front of the bastard and punched him into the wall. What the hell are you doing? Blonde Rugby Ball questioned as his bodyguards kneeled down to check on him. Luffy San, what are you doing? Koby cried as he wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, probably hoping he could stop me. Fat chance, this guy's scum. Let go, kid. I growled, purposely avoiding Koby's name. Why, you hit me. I'm Captain Morgan's son, you know. What kind of man are you? What does that have to do with anything? I said coldly, staring as tears welled up in the bastard's eyes. I'm gonna tell my dad and he's gonna execute you. Fight me yourself, coward. I roared, restraining myself only so I wouldn't hurt Koby, who still tried holding me back. Luffy-san. Calm down, please. Are you trying to get on the Marine's bad side? This little, I pulled Koby's arms off me and gave him a fist of love, not enough to send him into the floorboards but enough to shock him. You seem to be forgetting something, kid. I turned back, watching as Helmeppo fled like the coward he was. I'm a pirate. No one's paw. Back in the Marine base, a tall barrel-chested man smoked a cigar. I am, great. Yes. You're exactly right, Captain Morgan, sir, a Marine saluted. But hasn't tribute to me been a bit lacking lately? The Marine soldier began to sweat nervously as he answered the captain. Well, the citizens' wallets do have their limits. Their issue is their level of respect towards me, wouldn't you agree? Running down the hall, Helmeppo stormed into the captain's office. Dad, getting the attention of the captain and the Marine soldier, he continued. There's someone I want you to slaughter. Back in the field, Zoro is in deep thought as he relives memories of the past. The sound of bamboo swords striking against one another, a blue-haired girl with brown eyes smiling as she fought and beat a younger version of himself. You're still weak as ever, Zoro. The girl smiled warmly at him before flower petals breezed by and he woke up from his daydream. A casket, the last thing he saw before looking up and seeing the 6-foot-tall pirate with a straw hat standing in front of him once again. You again? You sure have lots of free time, Zoro said, his face still facing the ground, his eyes trained on the pirate. I'm untying you, the strange pirate said. Blinking Zoro was only brought more confusion when the man finished. Join my crew. It wasn't a request, it was a statement, an order. Zoro didn't take too well to being ordered. Say what? I'm bringing you into my crew. Forget it, me, stooping to a criminal's level. Screw that, Zoro said, turning away from the man who walked closer. What's wrong with pirates? Zoro looked at the man incredulously but was cut off before he could speak. If you say pirates are murderers, rapists and scum, you're thinking of the wannabes, bullies and scum of the lowest kind. Is there any other kind? Zoro challenged, only for the man with a straw hat to shake his head disappointedly at him. The real pirate, the adventurer who seeks to experience the world and uncover treasures, traveling with his crew, his nakama, his family through the wide seas. The freest people in the world, not caring for the laws that would bind them but for the thrill of the unknown. That is a real pirate. That is the kind of pirate I am, and that's the kind of pirate I want on my crew. Zoro stared blankly at the man who seemed so perceptive before now spouting off a romanticized image of the demons of the seas. Even if pirates like that existed, I've got interest. I have my own dream to achieve and I'm setting out after this ordeal to accomplish it, Zoro exclaimed, expecting the man to at least be deterred but to no avail. Instead the opposite seemed to happen. A dream, you say? What's your dream? Roared Zoro. The man grinned as if he'd just won the lottery, and despite himself Zoro couldn't help the smile that broke through his face. To become the greatest swordsman in the world. Chuckling, the man threw his head back and laughed to the skies, but it wasn't a laugh oozing with condescension but instead filled with elation. The Pirate King wouldn't have anything but the best. I've decided. You are joining my crew. Twitching in annoyance, Zoro roared. Quit deciding on your own. I said it before and I'll say it again, once I surpass this ord. Helmeppo decided to execute you tomorrow, by the way. That shut Zoro up as he gaped before gritting his teeth. That dishonorable cunt. Once I get out of here I swear I'm castrating that scum. The man just laughed at the morbid imagery before walking away from Zoro. You practice Santoryu, right? That means you've got 3 blades. Zoro faced the man again as he stared at the marine base. I get those blades, I get you out, we pay Helmeppo a visit, then we set sail. Zoro scrunched up his face in thought for a moment before sighing. Fine. I'll join your crew, but if you stand in the way of my dream your life is mine to claim. The man stopped and turned back to Zoro, all humor gone from his face. To get in the way of my Nakama's dream is to lose everything that I believe in. Take my head if I ever do get in your way, Zoro. I'd no longer be Monkey D. Luffy if I did something like that. Zoro could only gape at the man who waved back to him before walking into the marine base. Once the man was inside, Zoro couldn't help but smile. That is a real man. Closing his eyes, Zoro decided to meditate while waiting for his captain to return. Yeah, that plan lasted only a few seconds before the ground rumbled, the sound of crumbling rock and screams coming out of the base. Sweat dropping, what kind of guy did I just make my captain? Before all the noise sounded, Luffy walked into the base nodding to Nami, who was now disguised in a marine uniform. I get Zoro's blades, make a lot of noise so Nami can take the map and then we book it. I thought before looking at and witnessing what had to be the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. On the roof, Marines moved around Captain Morgan and his son, working on the statue modeled after their captain. Dad, why aren't you doing anything about the guy who hit me? Even you've never hit me in the face. Helmeppo demanded of a tall barrel-chested man who was facing the monstrosity of stone. Do you know why I've never hit you before, Because you think I'm? Turning to finally face Helmeppo. Yes, because you're. Smacking the blonde rugby ball to the wall, the man revealed his left hand amputated and replaced with an axe and his lower jaw wearing some metal mouthguard. Glowering at his son, he continued. A stupid son not worth even hitting. Helmeppo rubbed his face, grimacing in pain before jumping in fright as his father stalked closer. Make no mistake, I am the one that is great. Lifting his son in the air, Morgan brought the shorter sniveling man to eye level. Your dad is the great one. Me? Dropping his son, Morgan returned to face his statue. That reminds me, I hear a rat snuck into the crucifixion yard. If you mean that pipsqueak, I made sure she was dealt with. You killed her, I hope. Helmeppo and the surrounding Marines all gaped in shock as what came out of the captain's mouth. And no, I mean, she was just a little kid, pointing towards a Marine with a goatee and mustache. You, go into town and exterminate the vermin. You can't be serious. She's just a little girl. The Marine soldier said incredulously. I can't in good conscience. Anyone who disobeys my orders is a traitor, even little brats. Tucking his right hand behind him, the captain walked towards the soldier, his axe hand raised. I can't do it, sir. Giving a hum of false interest, the captain brought the flat of the axe head down onto the soldier's head, knocking him into the ground in front of Helmeppo, who cowered back even further into the wall. Lieutenant. 2 Marines cried as they approached the fallen soldier, now revealed to be the lieutenant. Why, you didn't have to go that far, Helmeppo cried, standing up and staring at the lieutenant, who grumbled in pain on the ground. It was with my strength that I rose to my rank of captain. Listen well, in this world, titles mean everything. Turning to face his men, the captain continued. That means that I, the captain and highest ranking officer at this base, am the most superior person here. The Marines all stared at the captain in fright as he finished. So everything I do is right, isn't that right, you maggots? Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. The Marines saluted more out of fear than actual admiration or respect. The rat can come later. For now, observe. The captain declared, facing his statue with pride. This is the symbol of my authority, which took many years to complete. Now, stand it up. Luffy's Pav Luffy, who'd been silently listening from the edge, out of sight, decided that aside from teaching Helmeppo a lesson, he should deal with the Marine captain as well. Looks like I'll be calling Gramps a lot sooner than I thought I would. Sora. I leapt from my hiding spot before throwing a punch at the statue from above. Bine. The luminescence that had gathered on my arm dispersing through the statue, stopping right before it phased through the floor. Don't want to get Nami by accident. I thought as I watched Captain Morgan and company gape as the hideous statue exploded. That was one ugly statue. Oh hey, there's the hideous thing it was based after, I said, pointing towards the captain, whose veins bulged as he yelled. Seize him. I am going to tear that bastard in half. Dad. That's him. He's the guy who hit me. Before Helmeppo could continue, I grabbed him and ran into the building as Morgan screamed more orders and profanities. So where'd you keep Zoro's blades? I'll tell you. Just stop dragging me. I stopped running and waited.
They're in my room. We passed it a few doors ago. Sighing, I turned back to 3 Marines pointing their guns at me, demanding I let blonde rugby ball go.
Nah. I held Helmeppo out towards them like he was a riot soldier's shield. Feel free to shoot, though. I charged forward past the Marines, who jumped to the sides to get away from Helmeppo's flailing and crying form. I stopped as I reached a room that reeked of Helmeppo's scent and dropped the guy in shock. I was staring at a pearly white door with a wreath of pink and purple flowers. Don't be full of perfume. Don't be full of perfume. Don't be, I gagged and staggered backwards as the smell hit me like 100 fists of love. Grumbling, I covered my nose and grabbed the 3 blades, planning on walking out the girly room as fast as I could, but I stopped dead in my tracks when I looked out the window. Zoro and Koby under the Marine's scopes as they pointed their rifles at them. Oh hell no, Kaio Obita. Zoro's paw visions of Kuina flashed through my mind as Morgan ordered his men to take aim. Weak as ever, Zoro. No, I refuse to die like this. Glaring defiantly at the Marines, I gasped in shock as a black blur came flying in. Tasuki no Hanran. My eyes bugged and my jack slacked as I witnessed tendrils of black flames erupt from the ground, flying forward to the Marines who just stood there like idiots. Sending them flying, the Marines groaned as they all crashed back into the earth, Captain Morgan unscathed as he seemed to be out of range. What the devil is that? That's a little sneak peek for what I have planned for you. I heard my captain growl at Morgan as he rose, extracting his palms from the ground he'd punctured when he did, whatever the hell he did. I had to look up slightly before when the man was 6 feet tall. Now I had to crane my head up as he towered over me at 9'5". Turning back to me, I could see his physique changed as well, robust and glistening in sweat. I wasn't sure whether to be impressed or horrified. How the fuck did he bulk up so quickly? Then I noticed his ears. A cosplayer. Luffy grabbed the rope binding me to the crucifix and tore it apart before he handed me my 3 swords that he'd strapped to his back. I nodded, accepting them thanks, only to rush past my captain as Morgan decided to take advantage of his turn back. Guess it was too much to expect you to have honor in any capacity, huh, axe hand. Morgan just growled at me, pushing back. Damn, I can't fight back fully after these 3 weeks after all. I struggled as I fought back the sleepiness that strived to take me. Ah! The Marines gave a battle cry, rushing towards me, blades raised. Damn it, no one has any honor anymore, I thought bitterly before hearing my captain growl behind me. This is Zoro's battle. Stand down. Next thing I know, a wave of pressure pulses through me, but it didn't feel oppressive, it felt comforting. Didn't look like it felt that way to the Marines though, all of them dropping like flies. Morgan only seemed to pale but grit his teeth and push me away. Taking advantage of the space we'd given ourselves, I crossed my arms, tensing them and clenched my teeth harder on Wado Ichimonji. I don't have the luxury of making this a battle of attrition. Oni, glaring defiantly at Morgan, who decided to just rush in blindly like a bull, I leapt past him, slicing through him with my strongest technique. Jiri. Morgan gave a strangled choke before crumbling behind me. Dad. Helmeppo screamed from across the base, watching his father fall. He looked towards my captain, then myself, terrified, before turning back to run. Smack. The dude's head snapped back to face us, his body following suit, a comical red glowing imprint of a fist on his left cheek. That's for trying to harm, Rika. The woman with orange hair who sat with the captain this morning said coldly before she kicked the downed man right where he was most sensitive. I flinched in sympathy, enemy or not, even if he is dishonorable scum. No man truly deserves that. I thought, glancing at my captain, whose face was all I needed to know he felt the same. See, Captain Morgan's been defeated. Those two beat Morgan and his son to the ground. Is it finally over? I tensed as the Marines seemed to stand up, getting ready for another confrontation, only to loosen my grip on Wado Ichimonji and stare in disbelief as they all cheered for the end of Morgan's reign. Guess they were just forced to follow whatever Morgan wanted to do. Luffy mumbled, but now that the fight was over and the danger was gone, all the adrenaline faded and I fell on the ground facing the sky. I'm hungry. Closing my eyes, I heard the pink-haired kid yelling out my name in concern while my captain just chuckled amused. I smiled as I slowly lost consciousness. Luffy's paw. After defeating Morgan and decking Helmeppo, Zoro collapsed, muttering the words, "I'm hungry," before passing out cold. I chuckled, shaking my head as I went over and moved him around so I could give him a piggyback ride. Leaving the Marines to continue their celebration, I walked towards the exit, Nami already leaning by the gate, waiting, a satisfied grin on her face. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I think that's an inevitability, Luffy. Joining me as I walked towards the restaurant owned by Ririka. So he's your first mate? Yep. Don't think I could have gotten a better one even if I tried. I grinned at her while she pouted. Hey, I could have been first mate, you know. Ah, but you said you'd think about it. Still on the fence, or was that your roundabout way of telling me you're joining my crew? She shook her head with a sad smile. No, it isn't. Taking a deep breath, she continued. I still have something I need to do before I set sail. If the offer still stands at that point in time, could I join you? Pirate King? The door will be open for you when you're ready, Nami. Smiling, I bumped her shoulder with mine playfully, careful to make sure Zoro didn't fall. Nami giggled before bumping back. Next thing I know, we were laughing and joking around all the way to the restaurant. Her smile and laugh forever burned in my memory. Nom 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 shhhhhhhhhhhp. Nom 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 nom. Nami sweat dropped watching Zoro pig out on whatever he could get his hands on, drinking sake from time to time in between each round of binge eating. Koby just looked amazed as the plates stacked up. Rika was a bundle of joy as she continued to serve Zoro more and more dishes, Ririka sweating but smiling as she cooked more for the man who stood up for them. Me? I just ate my 15th sandwich stacked with ham, tomatoes, lettuce, and cheese, 8 layers of each and every one. I think the only thing keeping Nami from looking at me in disgust was the fact I was eating slowly and not spraying bits of food every now and then. 5 plates later, 17 plates in total, and 3 barrels drunk dry, Zoro sighed contentedly, relaxing against the seat. So aside from myself, the Orange Spitfire and Pinky, who else is on the crew, Captain? Nami and Koby just stared before chuckling and gaping like a fish respectively. Actually, you're the only member of my crew so far. Blinking, Zoro pointed towards me and himself in disbelief. So, just you and me? Nodding my affirmation, Zoro began to sweat. You're planning to become king of the pirates, yet I'm your only crew member so far? Yep. Please tell me you at least have a ship. I did have a ship. Zoro didn't really look enthusiastic but sighed in resignation, looking at the decent-sized sailboat. Well, I guess if I'm your first mate, then that means you've just set sail. Turning to Nami, who looked amused watching the show. So what's your story then? I'm a thief who steals from pirates. What? Zoro blinked as Nami just repeated herself, not giving any context. Turning to Koby, the boy shared his dream of becoming a marine, and Zoro turned to me incredulously. Let me get this straight. You set sail on a small sailboat without a crew, aiming to become the pirate king, and ended up bringing a thief who steals from pirates and a boy dreaming to join the marines. Well, I recounted my story of my leaving the village, running into and killing the Lord of the Coast, getting dragged into a whirlpool, ending up on a passenger ship being raided by another pirate, meeting Nami and Koby along the way, traveling to Shell's town to drop Koby off to be a marine, myself to go looking for potential crewmates and stocking up on food, and Nami to get a map from the marine base. By the end of it, Zoro seemed like he wasn't sure if he should be impressed or concerned. Well, we're certainly not going to make it big on a small sailboat like that. I know. After this place I'm heading to Syrup Village on the Gecko Islands to meet up with someone, probably gonna try getting a bigger ship on the way. You're heading that way too? I nodded as I faced Nami, whose own lit up in joy. Think you could let me hitch a ride? Nami gave me a grin when I gave her the okay. I saw Zoro shifting his eyes between Nami and me suspiciously before shrugging. Well, when do we set sail, Captain? And as if waiting for just that moment, the Marine Lieutenant walked in. Pardon me. The man stopped a few steps away from the table Zoro, Nami and I sat on. Koby sitting between the lieutenant and myself on the bar. Is it true that you are pirates? Yeah. Just got my first mate right here. Grinning as I pointed to Zoro with my thumb. We appreciate that you saved our base in this town from that tyrant. However, now that we know you are pirates, in the name of the Marines, we cannot stand by quietly. Adjusting his hat, the man took a deep breath. You will leave this town at once. Out of obligation, we will refrain from contacting headquarters. It didn't take long for the oppressed townspeople to start voicing their displeasure. Hey, Marine. How can you say something like that? Even you guys were subdued and terrified of Morgan. We owe these people our lives. Who cares if they're pirates? Yeah. I just huffed in amusement as the townspeople started defending pirates from the Marines. Don't worry, Lieutenant, we'll leave. The man visibly relaxed but tensed again, expecting a continuation. I just need to make a call first. Confused, the man blinked before asking. Do you need to borrow a Den Den Mushi? I believe the restaurant owner has one in her back room. I chuckled. This is gonna be fun. No, I need a Den Den Mushi from the Marines. I'm calling up a, old friend. I smirked, seeing their surprise, but like professionals they shrugged it off and brought me a Den Den Mushi designed for the Marines. Who would you like to reach, sir? Patch me to 153rd branch, Vice Admiral Garp, please. I laughed as the Marines lost their composure upon hearing the name of the hero of the Marines. Nami and Koby weren't that much different, staring at me, probably wondering how in the world I was friends with a Marine Vice Admiral. Zoro just looked impressed and interested, scooting his seat closer to get a better chance at hearing the call. Very well, sir. Puru. Good afternoon, this is Vice Admiral Garp's office. My name is Bogard, the Vice Admiral is. Tossing cannonballs at unlucky recruits. I guessed cutting him off. The Den Den Mushi snail blinked before narrowing in suspicion. I'm sorry, who is this? Sup, Uncle Bogard, it's the man who will be king. The snail blinked once, twice, then just sighed. Give me a moment, Luffy, I'll grab Garp. Shishi your faces. Shishi. I didn't even bother covering up my amusement as the Marine's jaws were planted on the floor. Luffy-san. Who are? Yes. The Den Den Mushi came alive once again, now carrying a board like with half-lidded eyes as poking sounds could be heard. Whoever this is, make it quick, I got recruits to throw cannonballs at? Maybe throwing in a couple of fists of love for good measure? There was a beat of silence before the Den Den Mushi roared in laughter. Well, if it isn't my idiot grandson. Another beat of silence before the entire restaurant erupted in pandemonium. Grandson? Koby started looking at me like I was a rock star. Nami and Zoro both just gaped at me, while the Marines, well, some were pale, realizing they may have just cost themselves their jobs, and others were still keeping their jaws on the floor. Sounds like you made a big reveal, Luffy. Nuhuhahahahaha. Shishi. While that was amusing, I do have a reason to call you Gramps. The Den Den Mushi stopped laughing and its face became impassive. Found one already, Luffy? Captain Axehand Morgan, Shell's town. Tyranny, corruption, harming civilians and even his own men. Oh ho. The Den Den Mushi gained a dark look. The Marines now began sweating, realizing the Vice Admiral was far from amused. Thanks for the tip, Luffy. Anything else I should know about? I paused to ponder that before shifting my eyes at Koby, who began shifting nervously under my gaze. I think I found a new recruit for you, Gramps. I couldn't become a Marine, but I know someone who's dying to become one. A protector and upholder of justice. I smirked as Koby's eyes watered looking at me as if I just made his dreams come true. Actually, I think I did just make his dreams come true. Koby, huh? He a coward? Oh yeah. Well, there goes the look of admiration to be replaced with despair. Good. Means I get more time to break him into shape. Koby seemed torn between happiness and fear upon hearing that. On one hand he seemed to get Garp's attention more, on the other hand, he seemed to get Garp's attention more. Well, that's all I've got for you for now, Gramps. I'll let you know if I run into any other corrupt Marines along the way. Looking forward to it, Luffy. I love you, brat. Take care of yourself. Love you too, Gramps. I said, ending the call, the Den Mushi falling asleep. Turning to Zoro and Nami, I gestured to the sailboat with a nod. Getting the message, they stood up and followed as I left the Marines still reeling in shock and confusion. I stopped and punched the pink blob rushing at me down into the ground. Crash. Ow. Luffy-san, why? Koby complained as a bump formed onto his head. A little taste of what life will be like when Gramps picks you up for training. I grinned as he paled before he shook himself out of his stupor and jumped up to hug me. Thank you, Luffy-san. I just chuckled before ruffling his hair. Not a problem, kid. Luffy-san, you know I'm 16, right? What? Koby's sweat dropped as Zoro, Nami and I stared at him shocked. You're 16? Koby nodded, scratching his head in embarrassment. Yeah, I haven't really grown much. Probably haven't gotten to my growth spurt yet. What, so you'll be twice as tall when I see you next time? I shook my head at the thought before returning to my trek towards the sailboat. Take care, Koby. Take care, Luffy-san. Undoing the knots, I pushed us away from the dock and back into the seas. So where are you getting off, Nami? Oh, I'm getting off at Orange Town. The map I wanted from the Marine base was stolen by some pirates that sit up there. Which pirates? The Buggy pirates. My eyes widened in recognition. Buggy the clown. Yeah, you know him too. I shook my head but smiled, remembering how fondly Shanks used to speak about his old friend and his obsession with treasure. A fellow apprentice under the late Pirate King. Gold D. Roger himself. Can't wait to see what this guy's like in real life. 155 Chapter 4. Orangetown Pack, Chow Chow, Buggy Beatdown. Warning. Graphic depiction of violence is present. You have been warned. Luffy's paw as the sun sets. I wordlessly offer my code to Nami, who takes it gratefully before heading to the back of the ship to sleep. Remember to check the compass and stars every now and then, all right? She reminded me as she passed. I nodded and faced forwards. Zoro looked like he was going to doze off as well. Well, I can't have you doing that just yet. Making eye contact with him, I gestured for him to follow me to the front of the ship so Nami would have even less of a chance overhearing our conversation. Zoro looked confused but followed, curiosity bright in his narrow eyes. Something wrong, Luffy? I pressed my finger to my lips indicating for him to lower his voice as I observed Nami, whose breathing evened out and heart rate consistent. This stays between you and I for now, Zoro. Got it? Sitting down, Zoro faced me with stone-cold seriousness. Understood, Captain. How much do you know about devil fruits? Not a lot. Before meeting you I didn't really think they were real, to be honest. I sighed before taking a deep breath before giving him a quick rundown on what they were, what the consequences for eating them was, the different classes, and how devil fruit users were common in the Grand Line. Now my devil fruit in specific, well, it's one of the more busted ones. My fruit is the Inu no Mi model. The wind blows quietly, ruffling our hairs as Zoro's eyes widened more and more as I continued to explain what I knew my fruit was capable of. While explaining I made sure to keep my ears open for any changes in Nami's breathing pattern or heartbeat, but as both remained steady I had no need to stop. By the end of it Zoro was openly gaping at me, not the comical way where it reaches the floor or even just open fully, it was parted and his eyes seemed to refuse to blink as he absorbed the new information. Just to be sure, not all devil fruits are this ridiculous, right? Shaking my head, Zoro breathed a sigh of relief. So Zoro, will you accept my gift? Zoro looked down in contemplation, wrestling with himself if such a thing would go against what he strove for. Run it by me again. What happens when I become part of your pack? One of the special abilities granted to me by my Mythical Zoan fruit is the power to bless those who join my pack. Your senses and instincts become sharper and ties to others in the pack stronger. Your loyalty to the survival and safety of the pack is absolute and the rate at which you develop is drastically increased. The downside is you'll need to consume more to keep up with your enhanced capabilities as well as ways to keep active to burn off all the energy. Zoro nodded in understanding but still didn't seem to be sure. Isn't it kind of like cheating? I raised an eyebrow at that but considered his position for a moment. You think accepting this gift will make it seem like you're taking a shortcut to becoming the greatest swordsman? Zoro nodded, looking conflicted. I'm honored by the offer, Luffy, and that you're willing to share everything regarding your fruit, but, disappointed, and honestly stubborn. I pondered a bit more into how I could explain it wasn't cheating before I had simultaneously had a eureka moment and felt like smacking myself for not seeing how poorly I phrased how the increased rate of development worked immediately. To be clear, Zoro, when I mean it increases the rate of development, it's because you're forced into being more active. You develop faster because you're working longer and longer hours into your training. It's not some miracle drug or magic spell that gives you a decisive advantage, it just makes you more disciplined in your duties to the pack. In this case, since you're first made and a swordsman, your rate of development physically is only pushed forward by your desire to protect. Think of it like drinking an energy drink. You drink it so you can push further beyond. Or if you were a bookworm drinking coffee so you could go on reading for longer hours into the night. Zoro blinked before asking about the sharper senses and instincts. Oh, trust me, that will be balanced out by the amount of shit you'll deal with in exchange for it. Well, I guess there isn't really any other reason to decline it. Protecting you and our future crewmates is a matter of course as first mate after all. So how exactly do I, become part of your pack? Have you ever heard of werewolves? Yeah. Why? I stared blankly at him waiting for him to realize. 1 fist of love, 2 fists of love, 3 fi, Zoro's widened in realization and a little disgust before he exclaimed. You nay. Covering his mouth and shushing the man, I glanced at Nami, who shifted in her sleep but just snuggled deeper into my coat, her breathing and heart rate steadying. Sighing, I released my hand from Zoro's mouth, the man's eyes twitching. I'm not running around with a bite mark on my neck. Now it was my turn to look at him with disgust. I'm not giving you a mate mark, jackass. Mate mark? Sighing, I went more into wolf pack dynamics. How those of my pack would mark their mates on their neck. Typically only females wore marks and it was up to them, the females, if they wanted their male partner to carry one as well. Just give me your arm. Exasperated, I grew my canines to the point they were sticking out of my lips. That's disturbing. I rolled my eyes at Zoro's comment and just pulled his offered arm closer. Ready. Getting a nod of confirmation, I bit down on his arm and a silvery luminescence began spreading from where I broke into his skin in a spiderweb-like manner. Zoro grit his teeth but didn't flinch, glaring towards the sea. I let go once the luminescence stopped spreading, reaching his jaw, the entirety of his left side, that was visible, below his face covered in spiderweb like cracks glowing silver moonlight. Congratulations. You're my first mate on the pirate crew as well as my first pack member. Spitting out the blood and wiping the remnants from my mouth, I stood and took my compass out to ensure that we were still en route towards Orangetown. I looked up as Zoro seemed to wobble. I'd recommend you rest, Zoro. Much better you're asleep to let the changes go on their natural course than to fight it. I got a grunt in response as Zoro changed to take a seat by the bow of the ship, leaning his 3 swords against himself. A sweat dropped as the man's head tilted backwards and a snore escaped his lips before he shifted and continued sleeping silently. Shaking my head with a sigh, I returned to the task at hand. Hope you're as great as Shanks made you out to be, Buggy. No one's pav. Luffy could feel an eye twitch as he got off the boat watching the ruins of what was probably a quiet, peaceful town. Dad, I think I might strangle your best friend. Sorry, the scent of dried blood wafting through the air, really not sorry. Nami looked gloomily towards the town before giving me a sad smile. So I guess this is good, bye, Luffy? Are you okay? Nami's gloom receded, replaced with a look of concern. Zoro, how do you feel about teaching this Buggy a lesson? Zoro glanced at me before shrugging. I don't really mind, but why are we teaching him a lesson? If it's about the town being in shambles, that's pretty typical pirate stuff. Not that I'm complaining, more fighting down the line for me, just curious. He's not wrong, Luffy. This is what pirates are usually like. A dark look crossed Nami's face as she heard the monster's laugh echo in her mind. This is personal. Luffy said, walking towards the town, not giving anything else for his 2 companions to go off of. Nami and Zoro turned to each other silently, asking one another if they knew what that was about before running to catch up to the man with his eyes shadowed by his straw hat. Having caught up with Luffy, Nami decided to ask, how is this personal? Okay, yes, definitely rude, but seeing as this was the angriest she'd ever seen him, Nami couldn't help giving in to her curiosity. He's supposedly an old crewmate of my dad. Zoro, who had decided to keep to himself and not intrude on his captain's privacy, shifted uncomfortably, drawing his captain's attention. Zoro silently questioned his captain through eye contact if he should back away and leave him and Nami to discuss this amongst themselves. Luffy was about to shake his head, figuring as his first mate Zoro might as well know who he recognized as his father, but snapped his head towards the sound of a cannon being fired, Zoro's own newly enhanced senses allowing him to follow suit not that far behind. Just like that, a section of the already ruined town lit up like the 4th of July as the cannon detonated, propelling strong winds towards the 3. Boom. Luffy held his hat down so it wouldn't go flying away, his coat flowing with the gusts of wind. Where Luffy and Zoro watched impassively and stood resolutely against the power of the cannon, Nami staggered and stepped back in fright. What the hell was that? A cannonball. Looks like Buggy isn't done terrorizing this place yet. Zoro commented, seemingly not impressed or shaken by the earlier event. Luffy's glare just darkened further before he started walking towards the dock on the opposite side of town. The cannonball was fired in that direction, so Buggy, or at least his men, are there as well. You steal from pirates, right, Nami? While it seemed like a loaded question, what with the withering glare Luffy had on Nami didn't feel any of its malice was directed at her, so she nodded. Bleed them dry. With pleasure. Somehow the woman's eyes turned into belly symbols as she grinned, wholeheartedly on board with the command. Zoro's sweat dropped watching her display. Soon the 3 heard the sound of partying, a pirate ship with a Jolly Roger of a big red-nosed skull. Fire another one. Another one. Koby. A tall, lanky, dark green-haired man glared exasperatedly at the demands of the Buggy pirate crew members. No one was enough. No more Buggy balls will be fired until the captain returns. Oh come on, Koby. As long as we do it flashily, the captain won't mind. A crew member groaned, similar whines and demands following. I said, we wait for, hey circus freaks. Where's your scum of a captain? A voice called from the port. A moment of silence later, they registered the insult and proceeded to see who dared to try picking a fight with them. What business do you have with Captain Buggy, the man who will be king, boy? Koby said, glaring down at the man and his 2 companions. Luffy narrowed his eyes as he listened for anything that could pass as a captain with his observation hockey, but found only trash. The dark green-haired man on board the ship didn't take kindly to being ignored and dropped down. I won't ask again, boy. What do you want with Captain Buggy? The man growled. Unamused by the barking of a chihuahua, Luffy growled back. I don't waste my time on janitors. JJ Janitor. The long dark green-haired man cried in outrage. IAMCABAJI. Chief of Staff of the Buggy Pirates, you insolent fool. Grinning with malice as Luffy's jaw dropped, mistaking it for a sign of fear. You're the Chief of Staff? Luffy said, stupefied. That's right, boy, grovel and maybe I'll let you live. Luffy began shaking. To Koby and the Buggy Pirates it looked like he was shaking in his boots full of fright. To Nami, who saw his eye twitching rapidly as if he was about to have an aneurysm, well, she shook her head feeling sorry for the Chief of Staff. Zoro glared and walked in front of his captain. Let me deal with this, Luffy. Luffy took a deep breath and exhaled to calm his nerves, acknowledging the silent continuation. No sense in a captain wasting his energy on this joker. As if just now seeing him, Koby's eyes widened in recognition. You're pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. The Buggy Pirate crew members began mumbling amongst each other, also recognizing the green-haired swordsman. Retired from bounty hunting actually. Now, I'm a pirate. Zoro said back calmly, drawing his two blades and placing Wado Ichimonji in his mouth. Koby's eyes lit with passion as he too drew a sword. I am in fact a swordsman myself, Roronoa. And after I defeat you my fame will rise to new heights. Finishing his exclamation, Koby pulled out and assembled a unicycle. Zoro blinked numerous times watching Koby get on the unicycle and ready his blade. You can't be serious. Zoro's battle stance slipped slightly as he stared incredulously at the other swordsman. Oh, I am. Acrobat technique. Rushing towards Zoro with his sword arm tensed across his chest and his other hand behind him, Koby appeared to be going for a frontal assault. Luffy, on the other hand, could hear what he was planning with his observation haki and scowled but didn't interfere in the two men's duel. As Koby was only a few feet away, Zoro felt the sudden urge to duck. Trusting his instincts, Zoro ducked, sidestepping for good measure as Koby threw out a Molotov. Old man arsonist. The Molotov sailed through the air towards Nami, who yelped and tried to move out the way, but she wouldn't make it in time. Shit. Zoro cursed inwardly, knowing he was too far away to do anything. Before the incendiary bottle could reach her though, Luffy pulled her out of harm's way and into his arms before grabbing and flinging the bomb at the ship. Smashing against the mast, the Molotov burst into flames, igniting the sails bearing the Buggy Pirates' Jolly Roger. The men on board yelped, scrambling to put the flames out before it would reach the symbol of their crew's pride. Enraged witnessing his captain's beloved mark being tarnished, Koby roared. You filthy bastard! Have you no honor? Koby pedaled furiously towards Luffy and Nami only to be intercepted by an equally enraged Zoro. A swordsman who would resort to petty party tricks has no right to question anyone about honor. Zoro stated coldly, having zero respect for the scum in front of him. Bah. WHO needs honor in a fight as long as you win. You tell the story. Backpedaling away, Koby reaches behind himself once again. Another Molotov. Zoro tensed, preparing for what the bastard would throw out next.
Acrobat technique. Murder at the steam bath. Zoro grit his teeth as the smoke exploded outwards and blocked his vision. I will beat you like a Cherokee drum. Zoro, though blind visually in the smoke, followed Koby's movements, the bastard trying to get around him and attack from behind. Oni. Zoro turned as Koby began rushing from behind. Jiri. The smoke dispelled after the two clashed against each other, revealing Zoro calmly sheathing his blades and Koby frozen balanced on his unicycle. Once Wado Ichimonji clicked into place, Koby's body spouted blood and crumpled onto the floor. Koby. The Buggy Pirates screamed in horror as they rushed towards his fallen figure, the fire having been stopped little more than an inch away from the Jolly Roger they held dear. Zoro looked up to his captain and the thief navigator with shame and guilt in his eyes. Sorry.
It's fine, Zoro. Luffy got me out of the way. I didn't get hurt. More importantly, you taught the dishonorable bastard a lesson.
Zoro smirked at Nami's Cheshire grin, blushing as she'd only just gotten out of Luffy's embrace.
Luffy himself just watched as the Buggy Pirates turned tail and ran, bringing their fallen comrade with them back to the ship. Let's go explore the town for a bit. See if there's any civilians we can help.
Buggy will be back here eventually and probably send someone to look for us anyway.
Turning away from the ship with frantic crew members aboard, Luffy began walking towards the ruined town.
Nami and Zoro followed, the former pouting slightly that she hadn't gotten to steal anything yet. Buggy probably has some gold or jewelry on himself away from the ship, Nami, not to mention any possible gold he has hidden away in secret safes. Wait till later and you can relieve him of those as well. Cue another round of a swordsman's sweat dropping and chocolate brown eyes turning into belly symbols.
Not long after, a slim blue-haired man with an appearance resembling that of a clown stopped and shook at the sight of the ship. The man sported a crossbone tattoo that collided at his forehead and went past his eyes, red lipstick and a big round red nose. He wore an orange captain's hat bearing the symbol of the Buggy Pirates as well as an orange captain's coat, white and red striped shirt, a green sash tied around his waist, light green pants and white gloves. This man is Buggy the Clown, captain of the Buggy Pirates, worth 15 million belly and at the moment completely pissed. Rushing on board his vessel he glared at his crew who had somehow not noticed him there and were crowded around someone. Mind explaining what happened here you incompetent bouffons? He started coldly as his crew jumped back in fear hearing their captain.
See, Captain. It's Koby. Seeing his first mate laying on the ground, bloody from laceration wounds, Buggy's rage briefly dissipated to shock before burning anew. Who came to my ship, burned my sail bearing my Jolly Roger, and did this to my first mate? It was a man wearing a straw hat demanding to see you, sir.
He had Roronoa Zoro and an orange-haired woman with him.
Roronoa was the one who did this to Koby. Stuttering at first, the crew member finished with malice in his voice.
Buggy blinked when he heard a man wearing a straw hat had come looking for him though. It can't be that bastard Shanks. He was on the paper just yesterday caught drinking a whole town dry in the New World, not to mention he hasn't worn that hat in years if the sightings of him published on the news are any indication, and he did lose it around the time he supposedly left the East Blue. Nah, can't be. Buggy grinned with malice and fire in his eyes, deciding it must just be a coincidence. Well, there's only one thing to do then. Walking towards the side of the ship, he faced his companion who accompanied him on his walk around town. Moji, bring me Roronoa Zoro and his two companions. One is a man wearing a straw hat and the other an orange-haired woman. I want to execute flashily. The Buggy pirates roared in agreement and cheered Moji on. Moji was the first mate and thus vice captain of the Buggy pirates. He was a man with a muscular torso and thick lips, wearing a white fur vest that covers his chest, green pants held up by a black sash and shoes in the shape of an animal with white fur feet. At the moment he sat squatting above a large green lion with a purple mane, his pet Richie. You heard the captain, Richie. Let's get those pests. The lion growled in approval before running off to find the aggressors. They will pay for this flashily, Koby. I swear. Buggy promised as he sat down next to his chief of staff who remained unconscious. Meanwhile, in front of a pet food shop stood a small white dog with thin ears, beady black eyes, and a short, brush-like tail having a staring contest with Luffy. This had gone on for about 30 seconds since the three of them had come across the pooch, Zoro and Nami turning to each other wondering if they should try getting Luffy's attention or if they should continue to wait for whatever it was going on between Luffy and the dog to end. Luffy, what are you young'uns doing to Chow Chow? Zoro and Nami turned to an elderly-looking man with gray hair that's been arranged in 3 lumps, two on his side and one on the front. He was wearing a yellow-lined shirt with dark green pants and circular glasses. He stared questioningly at the group only for Zoro and Nami to shrug and turn to Luffy still having a staring contest with the dog. The small pooch then barked and lay down pointing its stomach upwards to Luffy with a wagging tail. In response Luffy kneeled and gave the pup a belly rub. You're a tough little guy, ain't ya? Looking even more confused, although with a hint of endearment or amusement, Nami and Zoro both asked Luffy what the hell the staring contest was about. This little guy here's standing guard for this shop. Apparently it used to be owned by his owner, a guy named Hawker. He isn't around anymore, Luffy said with a bittersweet smile, proud of the dog's commitment to his loved one while also sad for his loss. This pet shop is his greatest treasure, the place his owner raised him in and loved him with all his heart for as long as he can remember. Nami's heart clenched in sympathy for the small pooch who she also approached to give some love and attention to, the pooch slightly apprehensive at first before lolling his tongue in bliss from a chin scratch. Zoro grinned, the dog earning his respect for his commitment. The old man however just stared at Luffy in shock. How on earth did you know that? Are you related to Hawker in some way? The old man approached now with a look like he'd seen a long-lost relative he dearly missed. Nah. Chow Chow told me. Nice to meet you, Mayor Boodle. The little guy also told me about you taking care of him a lot of the time. Straightening up, Luffy raised his hand towards the mayor, offering to shake his hand in greeting. Flustered, the mayor stammered out a greeting in return. Huh? Yes, nice to meet you too, Mr. Monkey D? Luffy, pirate and dog whisperer. Luffy said with an infectious smile. Mayor Boodle couldn't help smiling back at the tall young man only to stop dead and glare. Pirate. Luffy also dropped his smile and expressed his displeasure through a scowl knowing what the mayor was thinking. I came here to meet an old friend of my dad. He's a pirate too but he doesn't do this. Gesturing to the ruins he continued. I thought Buggy was like my dad, got into piracy for the adventure albeit more obsessed with the treasure hunting aspect of it. Now I'm praying Dad forgives me when I see him again after I send Buggy packing. Mayor Boodle blinked slowly processing the information. Deciding that the young man was trustworthy, he got Chow Chow to like him so he was good in his book. The mayor offered the three a meal at his place a little ways away from the pet store. The three agreed as it was pretty close to noon and they'd only been able to eat bread and preservative meats for breakfast. The mayor prepared and served Chow Chow's lunch before leading the three to his home. As they were eating, Nami turned to Luffy. Luffy, if it's fine with you, could you tell me a bit more about your dad? You've brought him up a lot recently. Zoro coughed a bit, giving the woman a glare but Nami ignored it. She was curious to know more about the mysterious and admittedly attractive man she'd grown fond of. I wish I could set sail with you already Luffy but I can't leave them to him while I roam free. Her eyes grew gloomy, recalling what awaited her back home. Luffy noticed but didn't comment on it and just took off his hat, completely, even the string came off. That caught his two companions' attention as they'd never once seen him take it off. This hat was given to me by my father. It's my greatest treasure and a reminder of the promise I made with him 10 years ago before he set sail and returned to the Grand Line. Smiling fondly Luffy leaned back and twirled his hat like a baseball. Give it back to me someday, when you've become a great pirate, he said after he placed this hat on my head and boarded his ship. Having stopped twirling the hat, Luffy returned it back to its rightful place. That's why I plan on becoming the Pirate King before I face off with him in the New World and return his hat which he himself received from someone he admired greatly. his former captain and mentor, the late Pirate King, Gold D. Roger. Zoro, Nami and Mayor Boodle had been quiet throughout the tale, the latter two tearing up slightly at the fondness of which Luffy had while sharing it, the former wishing to meet the man who made such in his captain's life and, even if knowing of him only through a tale, gained admiration and respect for. The knowledge bomb Luffy dropped at the end however made Nami and Mayor Boodle fall from their seats in shock, the spoon in Zoro's mouth clattering as it dropped into his plate. What? Former captain and mentor, PP Pirate King, Gold Roger. For the first time in his life Zoro scrunched up his face in pain as his ears rang in agony. Luffy only mildly annoyed as while loud he was used to and prepared for the pain. Yeah, that's only the tip of the iceberg for downside Zoro. Luffy W, who is your dad? The man grinned at Nami who was too shaken to not stutter her words. The captain of the Red Hair Pirates, one of the 4 emperors of the sea, Red Hair Shanks. Boom. Mayor Boodle fainted and face planted into the floor. Zoro looked at Luffy like he was a celebrity he wanted to meet for a long time and Nami looked like her brain started glitching as she stammered incoherently, eyes turning into swirls. Shanks as in the rival of Dracula Mahawk. Zoro openly grinned widely at Luffy who mirrored his expression with a nod. You're his son. Yeah, in all but genetics. Luffy said as he returned to a normal seating position to continue his lunch. My biological father isn't someone I'm close to or even spent time with since I was born. My gramps raised me whenever he had time but until meeting Shanks I didn't have a father figure in my life, or mother figure for that matter. My adoptive older sister was the one who took care of me while she ran her bar back home. The fact that Luffy was raised by people who weren't his parents seemed to strike a chord with Nami and Zoro who had similar circumstances. Both looked like they wanted to know more but Luffy suddenly stood up and faced the direction of the pet shop Chow Chow guarded. Wake the mayor then catch up. Chow Chow is in trouble, was all Luffy said before running out of the mayor's house. Final warning. Once again, sections of graphic depictions of violence await past this point. You have been warned for the last time. Moji glared at Chow Chow who barked defiantly at him and his lion who ignored the mutt in favor of getting some food from the store. I am Beastmaster Moji, you mangy mutt. Obey me like all beasts before. Moji commanded, thrusting his hand out a confident smirk accompanying his glare. Instead of obeying however Chow Chow leapt and bit his outstretched hand. Ah! Get off! That hurts you stupid mutt! Punching the dog away, Chow Chow yelped in pain before getting up and biting Richie on his back leg. The lion roared in pain before looking back and swiping the poor pupper away, sending the dog crashing into the ground. Crashing on the ground the dog whimpered in pain, struggling to stand back up, memories of his beloved owner flowing through his mind. This bag is too big for you, Chow Chow, Hawker chuckled, smiling endearingly at his beloved puppy who tried to help drag a bag similar to one he brought around the shop earlier. Chow Chow leapt and bit Richie again, the lion roaring in pain and anger. You don't want to get hurt, Chow Chow, Hawker said laughing fondly as he held the puppy up who'd gotten dizzy trying to push the cart as well only to be sent flying. Chow Chow barked defiantly now standing between the lion and his only connection to his beloved owner. Bad Chow Chow. I told you not to eat the merchandise, Hawker reprimanded, before grinning as he took out a large platter of cooked meat. Now let's chow down. Both human and dog chewing on a tender, juicy stick of meat. Chow Chow was sent hurtling into the roof of the building, colliding with the resounding crack of ribs. Still he ran to stand between Richie and the shop. Chow Chow. I'm getting up in age now. I gotta check into the hospital. But I will get better. Guard the shop well until I come back. Chow Chow barked in confirmation to Hawker's request. Hold down the fort. Hawker's face flashed smiling widely at the pupper. Chow Chow growled covered in his own blood at the lion before he leapt towards Richie. The lion swiped down towards the dog once again planning to end it once and for all only for a chill to go up its spine. Suddenly a man stood in between Richie and Chow Chow. In his right hand he held Richie's paw which he stopped from descending further, in his left hand he held Chow Chow who bit into it before realizing who he had bit into. Loosening his bite, Chow Chow slowly returned to the ground, Luffy lowering his hand so the dog wouldn't just fall painfully. You did good, little one. Let me handle the rest. Luffy said softly, giving the dog an encouraging smile. The dog promptly gave a noise of affirmation before lying down and passing out, adrenaline having worn off now that Luffy arrived. That Straw Hat, you're the one who came looking for the captain aren't you? Moji accused, pointing at Luffy who kept silent still holding Richie's arm. The lion remained frozen like a deer caught in the headlights. I am Mohji, the best master and vice captain of the Buggy Pirates, you will answer me. Moji screamed before Richie whimpered and shook around hoping to stop his owner from aggravating the monster they just summoned, his instincts screaming at him to run and never stop. Richie. What the hell's the matter with you? Moji cried as he struggled to remain atop his lion. Kaio Obita. Moji stared in shock as the man wearing a straw hat suddenly grew from 6 foot to 9 feet and 5 inches tall, a pair of wolf ears popping out pushing his straw hat onto his back. DD Devil Fruit? Luffy's golden eyes turned to regard the vice captain of the Buggy Pirates and his pet lion with a cold glare that promised a world of pain. A promise he promptly kept as he threw Richie against an abandoned home down the street far away from the pet shop, subsequently sending Moji crashing down from where he once sat. I'll do to you what you've done to this town, what you've done to Chow Chow. Luffy took his coat off and covered the body of the bloody dog in it as the poor thing shivered when the winds blew. Muamina die. Luffy's arms morphed into claws, black flames erupting from them like a raging inferno. Gyakasatsu. Luffy's vision becomes black and white save for two red forms, one a man with a strange hairstyle sweating bullets wondering what he'd just gotten himself into, the other large feline that cowered in fear as Luffy phased right in front of him, left hand raised. Shine. From these yelps of pain filled the sky as Luffy mercilessly slashed, punctured, beat, and tossed the large lion around, Moji watching in horror as his pet and best friend was being trashed like a ragdoll. Stop. You're hurting him. Don't you have a conscience? Moji cried, causing Luffy to stop what felt like hours of torture. It had been 2 minutes. Luffy looked up from the lion's bloody battered form, bones poking out from odd angles and lacerations all around him, to the vice captain. He's just a pet, for God's sakes, you monster. Phasing to stand directly in front of the smaller man, Luffy just tilted his head as he looked down, his ears tilting to the side as well, making for a rather adorable expression if not for the blood splashed on his face and dripping from his arms. As he was now, the innocent mystified expression on the bloody man just made him look like a psychopath. You didn't care when you were attacking Chow Chow. It doesn't seem like you cared what you did to her and any other villager that didn't get away from your clutches either. Luffy said as he turned to a lone corpse of a woman with multiple stab wounds. Looks like Mayor Boodle and the other villagers didn't find her. Moji made a noise like a strangled noise, recoiling as if struck before he shouted back. So what? They're nothing more than stepping stones towards our captain's ascension as king of the pirates. A claw reached up and pushed his cheeks together, coating them with blood, making Moji's lips pucker. A stepping stone, huh? Moji shivered, disturbed and terrified of Luffy, who still had an innocent childlike expression, wolf ears tilted adorably. Guess I take the second step myself. Moji blinked, confused by the statement, before pain racked through his body, Luffy's other hand now embedded right underneath his sternum. Ah! Moji cried in pain as he was lifted off the ground by the foreign appendage, his eyes clenched in agony as Luffy raised him above his head only to be dragged across the ground, face first, through the streets as Luffy ran towards the nearest building and destroying its wall with Moji's body. Mercy? Raising his hand towards Luffy remorsefully only to hear, fresh out. And his head snapped backwards when Luffy delivered a roundhouse kick to the man's already shredded face, cuts and scrapes now commonplace. Moji groaned, losing consciousness, his eyes slowly rolling to the back of his head before clarity returned as he screamed, his left leg's tibia snapped by a savage calf kick from Luffy, whose leg shimmered with luminescence. Following up with an axe kick to the downed man's right leg, dislocating it at the knee. Moji tried to scream again, but Luffy clutched the vice captain's face with a vice-like grip, lifting him up before slamming him down onto the building's stone floor, cracks spider webbing outwards from where Moji's head was embedded still in Luffy's hand. Picking the broken mess of a man up once more, Luffy began his trek back to the pet shop, picking up the lion who had lost consciousness along the way. Nami, Zoro and Mayor Boodle reached the pet shop in record time once the mayor had been awakened. Fear for the lovable canine's safety pushed him to run faster than he thinks he ever ran before, Nami and Zoro not far behind, the latter bringing a first aid kit. Collectively, all three of their hearts stopped seeing the blood splashed around the ground, store and even on a roof from one of the neighboring houses, a familiar black and gold coat covering a small form. Chow Chow. Mayor Boodle kneeled in front of the coat and lifted it to see Chow Chow's poor state, coat soaked in its own blood from laceration wounds on his side, some even dribbling out the canine's mouth and snout. Nami's hands flew up to her face, her eyes filled with horror watching the sweet little dog's current state. Zoro's form shook briefly as he was filled with unbridled rage but suppressed his urge to find whoever did this in favor of opening the first aid kit and helping the older man patch the pooch up. Chow Chow, please stay with us. Stay with me. You can't die like this. Please hang on, I beg of you. The mayor cried as he worked, hands flying as he disinfected wounds with betadine, stitching and closing them with a sewing kit and washing the dog with a wet cloth. Nami, having broken out of her stupor, filled a bucket with water for the mayor to be able to do so. After some time cleaning the dog's coat and face, Chow Chow opened his eyes and whimpered affectionately towards the three of them. Mayor Boodle's face cascaded with tears as he brought the dog into an embrace, Chow Chow licking the old man's face. Nami's own face wasn't much different as she sat down by the pet store's steps, now wearing Luffy's coat around herself after cleaning the blood off it, watching the heartwarming scene. Zoro sighed in relief and plopped down next to her. I don't know about you, but I'm tearing whoever did this a new one.
Not if I get to him first. Nami glared at Zoro defiantly but with a smirk. The swordsman grinned before he smelled his captain's scent coming closer, along with two unknowns. Actually, now that I notice it, it's kind of lingering here as well. Soon Luffy came into view as he walked out of an alleyway carrying something big over his shoulder and dragging a man by his hair.
Looks like we're too late, Zoro said, gesturing towards Luffy with a nod. Nami froze seeing the blood before she darted towards Luffy. What happened? Did they cut you anywhere? Are you hurt? Blinking at the rapid-fire questions about his health, Luffy just stood still as Nami's hand moved around inspecting his body for wounds. Luffy looked to Zoro silently pleading, what the fuck do I do in this situation? Unfortunately, his first mate seemed as lost as he was, only offering a shrug in response as he and the mayor, still holding Chow Chow, approached Luffy. The mayor's eyes now also filled with concern for the man, not registering his new height. I'm fine, guys. It isn't even my blood. Luffy let go of Moji's face briefly to switch his hold to the man's hair, lifting him to show a shredded face oozing with blood from cuts and scrapes. Meet Moji, vice captain of the Buggy Pirates and one of the parties involved with Chow Chow as well as the murder of many unfortunate villagers who didn't evacuate in time. Whatever sympathy or pity Moji could have possibly gotten were squashed. And this, dropping the lion on the ground, the beast itself was coated with blood and bruises, its jaw dislocated and eye-swollen shut in a sickly shade of yellow and brown. Is the main contributor to Chow Chow's current state. Richie, Moji's pet lion. Mayor Boodle gave both scum a withering glare, but neither were affected as they haven't regained consciousness. Nami discreetly licked her lips as fantasies ran wild, imagining if this could happen to that sick bastard plaguing her village. As she was the one at the front, no one aside from Luffy saw this, but he pretended he didn't. Inwardly he groaned, his attraction for the orange-haired woman growing with every interaction they had. The fact she's wearing my coat right now really isn't helping. Zoro seemed to analyze the wounds and injuries, as if trying to picture how they were all made, how to deflect or counter attacks that possibly made them. Zoro didn't think for one second that his captain would attack him or he himself would turn on the man, but if this is the kind of brutality Luffy exhibits, he'd be a fool to expect opponents down the line wouldn't have similarly savage fighting styles. They could be vastly different, in fact they probably were, but with Luffy as his only point of reference available he could only take what he could get. You said you were going to send Buggy packing, right, kid? Yeah, why? Take me with you. Luffy, Nami, Zoro and even Chow Chow stared at the mayor incredulously, but the man wasn't affected, too clouded in rage. I'm pathetic. Chow Chow, and you have fought so hard, yet I, the mayor, sit by and watch our town be obliterated?
Oi, calm down old man, Zoro said, trying to placate the old man. Fighting for what you believe in and are passionate about he could get, but this was suicide. The guy wasn't anywhere close to being young enough or fit enough to pick a fight with pirates. Unfortunately, the mayor wasn't listening. Oh boy, here comes another monologue and background story, Luffy thought with a sigh, accepting his fate to sit through another one of these.
40 years ago, this place was nothing but barren land. We all worked together to clear the land, make fields, open stores, and build our town. This town is a treasure to me and all the citizens. I cannot let them domineer over it anymore. Oh wait, that's it? Luffy blinked in surprise. Lot shorter than I thought it was gonna be. Luffy shook his head before giving a half-hearted karate chop on the old man's head, the kind family members would give to a rowdy child. Mayor Boodle, you can come, but you're certainly not partaking in the fight. The mayor looked like he was going to protest, but Luffy just released a pulse of conquerors to end the conversation. Of course the mayor, it just looked like a very intimidating glance with the clear message. Take it or leave it, in the wolfman's eyes. Wait, wolf. Oh. You have wolf ears. Nami and Zoro slapped the comic bubble of surprise practically radiating off the elder, sweat dropping? You just realized? Shi. Luffy chuckled to himself, not noticing that because he wasn't wearing his coat his tail instinctually popped out and began wagging in delight. Everyone else on the other hand did notice. Captain? Zoro. What's up, Zoro? Oblivious of the embarrassing display he was showcasing, Luffy continued grinning ear to ear. It was only when Nami muttered something about him being freaking adorable that he began to sweat and his grin dipped. It popped out, didn't it? Yep. Embarrassing as well, right? Oh yeah. Luffy buried his face in his hands as he flushed, not really helping the situation as his tail still wagged though pointing downwards now, his ears really not helping by flattening towards the side. Nami couldn't hold it back anymore and just started petting him, now standing by his side trying to console him that it wasn't embarrassing but cute. Oh dear God, kill me now. Zoro laughed at his captain's expense, Chow Chow and the mayor joining in. The mood became light and playful as if there wasn't a broken mess of a man with a dislocated leg, shattered tibia, shredded face and hole underneath his sternum, a large lion in an equally poor state. Nami didn't even seem to find the blood on Luffy disturbing, too caught up in enjoying the flustered expression she'd never seen on the usually calm and stoic or infectiously cheerful man's face. Luffy's paw of walking towards Buggy's ship, still in my bathed in blood form, I carried the two bloody heaps that were Moji and Richie. You'd think that'd be enough to put Nami off from still seeing me as an adorable overgrown puppy, but no. I grumbled small curses under my breath as Nami now poked and scratched my ears and tail affectionately from time to time, Zoro and the mayor failing to suppress their amusement as they snorted from time to time. To make matters worse, whatever pedestal I used to be on in Zoro's mind, built out of admiration, fear, or respect, crumbled when I gave in to Nami's pouty face and let my ears and tail pop back out. I could practically hear the whipped comment going through his head. Oh God, I need to make sure Shanks never hears about this. I paled already imagining the endless teasing that would ensue if word of this ever came to his knowledge. Nami, please stop. We're almost there. At this point, Buggy's pirate ship was only a few minutes away and I wasn't really keen on the idea of them seeing something like this. Pouting with her cheeks puffed up adorably, I had to bite the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't fall victim to it again and just glared back at Nami. Huffing, she backed off, but I got the feeling as soon as we were done here I may have to deal with her fawning all over again. I watched impassively as someone on the ship noticed us approaching and began screaming for someone to get their captain. Soon enough, a man fitting the description Shanks gave of his old friend came to the side of the ship, big red nose in all its ridiculous glory, shining in the afternoon sun. Having stopped a little ways away from the ship, I flung Richie towards them, his body rolling on the ground before coming to a stop by the ship's side, and held up Moji's bruised and battered body by his strange fluffy shirt, now red instead of white, for all the Buggy pirates to see. Screams of horror and outrage filling the air, Buggy seething at the sight. You know I expected more from someone Shanks talked about a lot. I called out to Buggy as I sent Moji crashing into the ground in a crumpled heap not far from the purple-maned lion.
Buggy paused at the statement before his eyes landed on my straw hat. His eyes bugged out before he grit his teeth and began barking orders out to his men. Boys, prepare the buggy ball. We're showing this bastard why we're going to be the ones conquering the Grand Line. Roars of approval from the crew filled the air as they ran to point a cannon towards me and the others. I'll send Shanks your remains, brat. That'll be my vengeance for the curse he cast on me.
Curse? Dad never mentioned anything about A. You're seriously still carrying a grudge about that? I sweat dropped at the older man's pettiness over the accident. Buggy's glare narrowed. Oh, so you know what that bastard did?
It sounds like it was an accident, if not completely your own fault. That certainly didn't seem to sit well with the older captain who roared profanities with pure white eyes and shark teeth, flames of anger bursting out of him. Wait, what happened? Nami asked, but I just told her I'd share the story another time as Buggy lit a match. Behold, boy, the power that will conquer the Grand Line. Die flashily to my buggy ball.
The mayor paled. Oh, I forgot about that. We need to get out of here. That thing is the special cannonball they use to take out whole sections of the town. That got Nami's attention as she grabbed the old man by his vest and started shaking him around with shark teeth. Why didn't you say anything earlier? It'll be fine, Nami. Trust me. I turned to Zoro and asked him to let me deal with it. Nodding, Zoro relaxed his stance and silently watched.
This isn't another Molotov, Luffy. It's a freaking. The world lit up as the cannonball was fired. Nami and Mayor Boodle clenched their eyes thinking this was where it would end, while Zoro, who hadn't, widened his eyes and grinned as I caught the red sphere bearing the buggy pirate's Jolly Roger in my bare hand.
A few moments of silence passed as the pirates aboard the ship could only gawk in stupor while the mayor and Nami opened their eyes hesitantly, wondering why nothing seemed to have changed. Cannon. Ball. Yeah, this brings back memories of playing Catch the Cannonball with Gramps. Catch the what? Nami cried in shock as Zoro just laughed at the still stupefied pirates. Personally, I would have sliced the thing, but since that would have still meant the two halves crashing and possibly exploding behind us, I'm guessing you already knew that. My cheeky grin was all the confirmation Zoro needed as he shook his head in amusement. Breaking out of his stupor, Buggy actually began sweating as he grit his teeth. Looks like he plans on turning tail and running. Well, I can't have that now, can I? Hey, I thought you were a Captain WHO was going to make it big on the Grand Line. My grin widened as I uttered the words Dad said always triggered Buggy. Big nose. And just like that, the crew on board Buggy's vessel paled and their eyes darted nervously to their captain, who turned beet red. What did you say about my nose, you bastard? Soru. Teleporting onto the ship's deck, I released a wave of Conqueror's Haki to knock out all the extras, the end of my smile twitching upwards at Buggy, whose face paled once again. Recognize it, Buggy? Shanks told me your former captain had the power of Conquerors too. Buggy glared before flicking his hands, thrown knives popping in between each finger and pointing his shoes up as blades popped out of their outsoles. Chop chop buzzsaw. Buggy's upper body levitated above the ground as his lower body spun towards me, spinning like the attack implied. I jumped up to avoid it. Can't move in midair, can you? I just smirked as he threw his blades at me. Geppo. Kicking the air, I moved out of the blade's path. Sure about that? Cheeky brat. Chop chop cannon. Flicking his hands once more, another set of thrown knives was brought out. Buggy's fist launched towards Luffy, who just turned his head out the way before a feeling of dread settled in his stomach at Buggy's expression before hearing the sound of a tear. Looking to the side, I see Buggy had changed the direction of his attack slightly so he could hit my straw hat. You, gritting my teeth, veins bulge on my neck as my face contorts in fury. How dare you damage this hat? Ho ho, based on your reaction, that really must be that red-haired bastard's hat. This is my treasure, you red-nosed freak. What was that, you brat? Chop chop festival. OUNOKOUKA. Luffy's body glowed a silvery luminescence as if he had bathed in moonlight as Buggy's body separated into multiple flying parts, all circling Luffy save for his feet, which remained planted on the ground. The battle ensued as Buggy's divided body parts rushed towards Luffy, who just narrowed his eyes towards Buggy's head hovering outside the ring. Die, brat. Unamused by the frankly pathetic power the enemy captain seemed so proud of, Luffy flashed above Buggy's head with his left arm cocked back, a black sheen spreading across it. Armament. Luffy muttered to himself before bringing his fist down on Buggy's head, which was looking left and right for the missing wolfman. Just seconds before the fist came into contact with his head, Buggy exclaimed in realization, "Ah, you ate a wolf devil fruit?" Back on the docks, Nami, Zoro and the mayor fell on the floor. Now you realize, Luffy was too pissed about his hat to even register it to Buggy till that moment that he was also a devil fruit user. Slamming into the blue-haired captain's head, waves of energy dispersed inside, disrupting and damaging the man's brainwaves before the head was sent plummeting down into docks, making a crater as it landed. Unconscious, the levitating divisions of Buggy's body fell onto the deck lifelessly. He won't be waking up for a long time. Luffy landed on the ship, returning to his normal height with a disappointed sigh. Damn it. I brought my hat out to inspect the damage. Looks like it can be sewed up at least. I thought bitterly as Nami called out to me if it was okay to board the ship yet. Yeah, it's all clear. Soon Nami, Zoro and Mayor Boodle came aboard the ship as I started picking up Buggy's various body parts and tossed them into a bag. What are you doing? While I doubt Buggy will be waking up anytime soon, I figured it's better to not leave it up to chance. I explained to the mayor as Nami gave me a once-over to check for wounds before going to probably loot the ship. Wise choice. The elder commented before looking up to the sound of barking and yelling. Mayor Boodle. Mayor, where are you? Mayor. The mayor and I walked to the front of the ship as a crowd of what I assume were the evacuated villagers, led by Chow Chow, arrived. The lovable pooch ran aboard the ship followed by the villagers who carried faces of shock and confusion having seen the state of the ship as well as the pirate captain's head resting in a crater on the port. Mayor Boodle. What's going on? Calm down everyone. I'll explain everything, so just settle down. I turned to Zoro. Keep the mayor company and deal with any buggy pirate who wakes up or comes looking. I smell a few lingering scents of pirates who aren't on board. Nodding, Zoro walked to the side of the ship to keep watch. I left the mayor to continue sharing the events of the day and went into the ship to look for Nami. Nami's paws seeing no new wounds on Luffy and the buggy pirates on deck incapacitated with foam coming out of their mouths. I moved to inspect how much I get out from this venture. My thoughts wandered to Luffy. As I walked into the treasure room, a single pirate passed out on the floor with a bottle in his hands. Luffy's definitely strong. He defeated Alvida, that marine captain back in Shell's town, Morgan, and he just beat the buggy pirates captain and vice captain on the same day without a scratch. Aside from that tear on his hat. I lit up the alcohol lamp and smiled at the large hoard the buggy pirates amassed, picking out a golden crown with gems and jewels adorning it. I placed it on my head. And it's all mine for the taking. I froze slightly hearing the sound of a sword being drawn. What are you doing with our treasure, now? Crap. He woke up, by Captain Buggy's orders. Anyone who gets near here is to be. The clearly still drunken pirate paused and looked at his bottle, shaking it and realizing it was empty. Huh? I'm all out? By now I was standing up and facing him and moved to try tricking him with some feminine charm. It hurts. I yelped in fake agony, kneeling arms clutched to my chest. What? What's wrong? My chest suddenly started to hurt. I whimpered in pain again, turning to the side slightly. All right, now my girls are right in his line of sight. What? Your chest? A lecherous grin made its way up his face and I moved to deal with him, only for the pirate to be thrown to the side and out the ship from a now human-sized hole, the late afternoon sun's rays lightening up the room. A pissed-off looking Luffy glaring towards it before he shifted his eyes at me, less angry but still annoyed. Do you flirt like that often? At first I was offended before I noticed something strange in the way he said it. It almost sounded like, are you jealous? I asked incredulously as Luffy looked like he'd been caught red-handed stealing some food. I caught Luffy discreetly trying to take some of the preservatives on the ship, before he huffed and turned away pouting childishly, tail sticking up defiantly and ears pointing upwards, crossing his arms. I stared for a few seconds before giggling. A smart powerful wolf 1 second, a petulant adorable puppy the next. Ah, is the big bad wolf jealous? Walking to stand right in front of him I swayed to the side to get in his face, but, as he still refused to face me, he turned to the other side with closed eyes, only opening them once he's already turned completely. This went on for a bit before I just grabbed his face and forced him to look straight at me, but he just shut his eyes. Let's see how long that lasts. I trailed a finger from his jawline down to his chin before bringing my face closer to his neck, breathing in his scent. I smirked hearing him grit his teeth, his hands clenching, his arms tighter. Taking my finger off his chin I placed on the edge where his chest disappeared underneath his silver dress shirt, pleased seeing him tense up as I moved my palm around his chest, feeling the toned, tight muscles underneath. I vaguely registered him saying my name with a tone clearly signifying a warning, but I was too immersed in the man who'd come into my life just a few days ago and flipped my world upside down. He made me see things that shouldn't have been possible, and opened my eyes to possibilities and dreams I wouldn't have ever thought possible before. He could be the key to saving everyone from him. My hand paused as I began to wonder. No, Nami. Even if he's strong enough, it isn't his problem to deal with. He hasn't even known you for more than a few days. You can't take advantage of him like this. Berating myself with a scrunched up expression, biting my bottom lip in frustration, I didn't notice Luffy's hand coming towards my face until he pushed my chin up and gently made me face him. His half-lidded eyes steadied mine with a contemplative expression, his hand remaining on my chin as his finger brushed against my bottom lip. What is it that troubles you, Nami? What is it you desire? What is it that keeps you from joining my side? My heart fluttered and I wished I could turn away from him, but I couldn't, his half-lidded gaze coaxing the words out of my lips no matter how much I struggled to keep them in. My mother was killed by pirates, I reminded him, his other hand that had remained dormant at his side now resting on my waist, pulling me closer to him. They never left, they're still there in my home. They still walk on the ground where they spilled my mother's blood, where my sister, friends and neighbors all live on. They still terrorize and control them to this day. Tears started falling, but I didn't care to stop them. They made me a deal to free my village, a deal I took when I was 10 just days from when they shot my mother in front of me, a deal to pay them 100 million belly for my village's freedom. Luffy never once turned away from me as I spilled the emotions I kept bottled up all these years. I've stolen from pirates, marines, corrupt nobles, I flirted and seduced countless men into my trap to take from them as well. Luffy, I've done everything short of murder and selling my own body to reach this far, and I'm so close, but, I choked a sob as I buried my face in his chest, staining his silver shirt in my tears. But what, Nami? Luffy asked me, gently stroking my back to comfort me, his other hand still resting on my waist securing me in front of him. But I don't want to give him anything. I know he isn't going to honor his end of the deal somehow. I don't know how, but I know he will. I spat venomously, picturing the bastard already standing over her with his horrifying teeth and infuriating laugh. You'll never be free, my little kitten. Never. Shashashashasha. Quote. So he's the only thing keeping you from being mine. My breath caught in my throat. Despite the tears and despair that came with letting my memories and emotions flow out for the first time in years, I couldn't help the warm feeling sparking in my chest from his words. I tried to make my mouth work,
To say yes, that if he weren't there I would be his, I would be by his side, his till the end of time. I felt his hand leave my back as it raised my chin from his chest to face him again. Golden irises and black sclera looked back at me through his hooded eyes as he asked me a slightly different version of the question. If I kill him, will you be mine? My navigator. He leaned down to me, face now just millimeters away from my own, his lips tantalizingly close. My confidant, his other hand now resting on the other side of my waist, before both hands traveled downwards, hovering the back of my thighs before lifting me up. My partner. I was forced to grab onto his shoulders so I wouldn't fall as he spun the both of us around before he lay on the treasures which gleamed in the setting sun's light, making him even more enticing than he already was. My queen. Luffy sat against the treasure, my legs straddling him underneath me, my hands resting on his shoulders, his hands resting on my waist, my face now hovering over his still dangerously close. My heart pounded against my chest, and my eyes searched for any semblance of deceit but they found none, my brain struggled to find any reason for what angle he could be playing but came up empty. Finding nothing in him, I looked back at myself. Is this what I wanted? Is this what I desired? Yes, yes it is, my own eyes hooded as I brought our faces even closer together, my hands leaving his shoulders to grasp his dress shirt and pull him up from the pile. Yes, Luffy. Luffy's face broke into a grin as his hands left my waist and came to rest on my plump cheeks. Kill him and I will be yours forevermore, my king. In the setting sun's light I kissed the man who will forever be mine, and I his.